While the original film was relatively straightforward, Back to the Future Part 2 takes off the skateboard wheels and plays with all the time travel mechanics that you could ask for. Hell, for multiple generations, this sequel pretty much defined what the rules of time travel were. There's so much to discuss. Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me, as always, is David.
I come in peace.
This is a science fiction movie podcast. We get together and talk about sci-fi movies. That's simple. And earlier this year, we hit a classic. We did Back to the Future, and it was not going to, only a matter of time before we did part 2. So here we are. It's finally upon us. We're in the future now. Back to the Future's in the past. Back to the Future 3's in the future, but we're at Back to the Future Part 2.
Yes.
That was all accurate.
It was all accurate, but as soon as you involve Back to the Future 3, the one set in the past, is now in the future, everything's messed up.
Yes, it made complete sense in my head.
It is also worth noting that we did delay this. We had to keep it off the schedule until November 5th, because that's the special Back to the Future Day.
Well, we didn't need to, but we did notice that our release day is a Tuesday. It happened to fall on the 5th of November, and that happens to be the date, November 5th, 1955. Now, admittedly, that's the date he goes back to in the first movie. In the second movie, when they go back to the 1955, it's actually at the end of the story, so they're in the 12th of November.
Yeah, we probably should have delayed it a week, but whatever.
So, notably, next Tuesday is actually the 12th, so we could have actually hit the right date that they go to in this movie.
Look, all I'm saying is, November 5th, this year specifically, we have Election Day in the U.S. is today. God help us all. We have Guy Fawkes Day across the pond for you guys.
Yes.
And we got Back to the Future Day. And only one of those is the most important thing that I think is important with this day.
Yes, November 5th, 1955. It's Back to the Future Day. It's absolutely the most important thing. But yeah, it's just more applicable to the first movie than it is this one, bizarrely. Yeah. But either way, we're here. It feels weird doing a spoiler-free section, but I think we still will do a small spoiler-free section just to give some general feelings before we jump into it. We'll give you a warning before we do go into spoilers. And of course, if you are enjoying the show, do hit the like button on YouTube. It helps us out a bunch. And you can support the show and get some bonus content, but I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode. So, Back to the Future is a classic. It's pretty much perfect. We sang its praises. It was just gushing of love and all sorts last time. I don't expect it's going to be that different this time, but I will. It feels weird to even bother giving a premise. Let's just say the first movie had a little cliffhanger sort of fun ending tease, and the movie just kind of picks up from there. We go to the future in this one. Things get messed up. We even go back to the past again, and I'll just leave it there. We can save all the plot stuff for once we've given the spoiler warning.
Okay.
David. How do you feel about Back to the Future Part 2?
When I joined this show, there were a few movies that I really wanted to get my thoughts out on. There were a few that I was like, okay, you haven't done this yet with Tara, so I'm happy that I'll eventually be the one that gets to cover it. And one of those is Back to the Future 2, because yes, we did go on a whole extra long episode of how much we love the original Back to the Future. And God knows I have said over and over again how much of a sucker for time travel films I am. So when it comes to Back to the Future 2, this is the best Back to the Future movie. I will not take questions. This is absolutely top tier. This is the gold standard that I hold every other time travel movie to when it comes down to how it does its stuff. It's just perfectly paced. It goes future, past. I mean, I know you didn't list it off, but I'm just going to say alternate timeline stuff. It hits everything, and it does it so well. It explains everything so perfectly that anyone can understand it. I cannot think of a better way to hit a pop culture time travel movie than this. It literally does. And then, again, not spoiling anything about the ending, but obviously this is part of a trilogy. it perfectly sets that up as well. Like, everything about this is just so magnificently well done that this is, if Back to the Future were the only movie that existed in the trilogy, I could be like, yeah, okay. If eventually they wanted to do a remake, I wouldn't be too upset by it. But because this movie exists, I forbid Hollywood from ever doing a remake. It is absolutely unacceptable. So I like it. It's okay.
That was some passion there.
Yeah.
I am going to be exceptionally positive. I have always loved Back to the Future Part 2. I grew up loving it. I have just, as I was watching it today, I had so many thoughts to give that are all positive. But I will say, it's not the best one. The first one is the best. Right? And there's a few reasons for that. I think the first movie is just completely perfect, pretty much in every possible way, in terms of script, in terms of pacing, in terms of everything. I think this movie is a phenomenal sequel in that it takes what the first movie did and is so playful with how it does new things, with how it plays with going to the future, going back to the events of the previous movie, and how it does all that stuff is so playful. But I will say, there are some things you can nitpick in this one. There's a few contrivances to make things go forward. There's a few little plot holes, and they don't detract from my enjoyment in any way. But when the first movie, Back to the Future, is one of the most perfect things ever made, and you have to compare this to that because it's the sequel, inherently, it is, it's just slightly less than perfect. And that's where I stand. Back to the Future 2 is fantastic, but it's not as perfect as the first movie. I can understand why the playfulness of how it uses the time travel and doing some of the story beats that it does is more appealing to you. I can understand why some people might go, oh, this is my favorite because of this, this, and this. I can completely get that. But it's not quite perfection. And that's all I'm saying. It's not quite perfection.
I get what you're saying. For me, the way that I view it is, like, if you look at the Star Wars original trilogy, New Hope can stand on its own. It is just its own movie. You never needed to know there were sequels. It is its own movie. Empire Strikes Back is the better movie, but it cannot exist in a void. You need the first one in order to have Empire.
I mean, I disagree with that, but go on with your analogy.
Okay. Well, I think that's the same for Back to the Future. I think that it's the same sort of thing.
Okay.
Yes.
But I want to point out something here, though. While I will agree at large the consensus is that Empire is the better movie, and therefore I see what point you're making with that, the consensus for Back to the Future is not that 2 is the better one. I just want to make that clear. You are in a minority by saying that.
Absolutely. I will stand up for my little hill that I'm dying on. But regardless, I think that it is a thing of, in terms of being able to stand alone, yes, you still need the first one, and the first one being perfect is absolutely, like, necessary for that to work in the second one. But for the second one, I think that yes, there are contrivances. Yes, there are things that just had to happen for the sake of the plot. But, like, that's every movie. Every movie has little contrivances. It depends on how long they're going to spend convincing you that they make sense. And this movie decides...
No.
Okay, all right.
Back to the Future 1 does not have this. This is the point. Perfection, and then this one is slightly less than perfect. And again, I'm being positive here. I love Back to the Future Part 2, but it is not as perfect as Part 1 when it comes to how it handles everything it sets up. But there's a few contrivances.
I disagree because even if you go back to the first one, this idea of the ripple effect of, like, how it takes a certain amount of time before, like, Marty starts disappearing, despite the fact that if you look at it from a logical perspective, the last born child should be the first one to disappear because he would be the one who's, like, furthest down this butterfly effect. But regardless, it is a contrivance that, like, oh, he's just starting to fade away in the middle of this. But it works. You accept it because it's so well done in the movie. All of these contrivances that I'm sure we'll list, I will probably agree with most of them. But the fact that they are done so well is something that I just am willingly open to accept, regardless of how they are presented.
I will say, though, the example you just gave, right, is kind of a weird one, just because you're arguing time travel rules at that point, and that's a can of worms that you can't be right on because it's time travel, right? Yeah. Some of the contrivances in Part 2 are not time travel related. They are character decisions related. They are just basic logic of, like, why isn't someone noticing that or hearing this thing? It's just because the plot has to go on without them noticing it, otherwise it falls apart. And there's moments like that, and that's all I'm saying, right? I love Back to the Future Part 2. I think it is a great sequel that takes what the first movie did. It gives characters who, because Doc Brown, I think, is a great example of, like, he's really likable in the first movie, but we spend most of the Doc Brown time with the 1950s version of Doc Brown. One of the most exciting things about Part 2, I think, is we get to spend all the time with the main 1985 Doc Brown going forward, who knows everything, who is aware of everything, and is doing all this stuff. And, it's playful with what it shows of the future. It's playful with all these things. I think whenever it does a callback to the first movie, it's always got a purpose. It never just feels like a cheap ploy, and at the very least, it's usually a case of, hey, we're using something you recognize from the first movie to show that something's changed because we're in a different time period that wasn't in the first one, or we're in an alternate version of a time period, and that's why we're repeating motifs, we're repeating ideas like that. There's always a purpose to it. So I am going to be exceptionally positive here. I think just by contrast to you thinking it's better than the first one, I'm going to sound like I hate this movie. And but I'm going to have to really make it clear I love this movie.
Yeah. I promise not to play on that too much. Like, I understand that you enjoy the movie. I understand that it is just a thing where this just, I don't know, everything hit right for me. Everything in terms of, like, my interest in time travel movies, not only was this one of the earlier examples, but it was one of the ones that I thought was done best. I think that it is this shining example, because as much as I love the first Back to the Future, the actual time travel aspect of it is very minimal. He gets back to the past. He has a knowledge of a singular event that happens in the future, and that is what the plot is moving forward. But the actual time traveling aspect of it is very minimal. Get to this movie, it's the focus. It's everything. You barely go like 20 minutes in the movie without them going to some other time period.
Well, it depends how you define what makes it time travel-y. Like, is what you're saying here is basically they have to keep traveling and doing new things with it for it to be. Whereas I think no, the entire first movie is all time travel. The whole point of it is a fish out of water in a different time period, and he's clashing against that. Like, it's so read into every fiber of every moment of that movie that saying that it's not time traveling enough feels insane for me to hear. I don't know, like, it's wild to me.
I get what you're saying. I understand the point you made, because yes, it is a person from the future is constantly doing these things, but, like, ultimately a lot of the plot of Back to the Future, of the fish out of water stuff, could just as easily be accomplished with somebody moving across state or moving, like, from the other side of the country. It is just the impact of he knows that future events of his parents need to get together and the clock tower stuff.
Okay. Oh, pitch me then how you do the story of he has to get his parents together in a different state. Like, he's just moved to a different state. How do we get into that same plot?
No, it's the sort of thing of he just thinks that these two people should be together, and the fact that it's his parents are completely superfluous to the fact that, yes, it is the time travel plot of it.
No, that's
Pete,
so
I'm not
boring.
arguing I dislike the movie or anything. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that the actual time traveling aspect of it, the actual, like, nuts and bolts and machinery of it, he gets into a magic box, essentially. He goes back in time, and then he's just there. And that's great. I love the movie. I'm not saying I dislike it. But the actual, like, mechanics of it and having fun with the mechanics and exploring the different ways that they do things, that is what this movie is all about. It messes with the idea of these parallel timelines, the idea of, like, the different things that they can get up to, the fact that, like, multiple versions of someone can exist at a time.
I know, I get what you're saying, and I agree this movie plays with the time travel mechanics, right? That's what this movie does. That is absolutely the point of Back to the Future Part 2. I'm just fighting the idea that the time travel part's not that important in the first movie, because that is an absurd statement.
Then let me correct the statement. Maybe I misspoke. I think that the time travel mechanic aspect is, like, the coolest part for me. That's the part that I go into it and I'm like, yes. And the mechanic aspect was absolutely minimal in the first movie.
David watches The Terminator. It was good, but the robot part just wasn't that important. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's like, I could have just been any good dude. Could have just been a tough dude. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, he was just ripped. He was just wearing bulletproof vests the whole time.
okay, of all the weird takes, I was not expecting.
Sorry,
okay.
I meant the mechanic aspect. I meant the parts of actually examining, like, how does time travel work? How is this, like, let's put it to different settings. And that's what I really enjoy about this movie so much, is that it does all of them. It's not just a thing of, oh, this movie's the one where we go to the future. Like, no, it's all of the different mechanical settings of time travel. We do every single conceivable one, except for time loop. That's the only one that we don't cover in this.
There's no room for it. It's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess just broadly speaking, obviously the music's still fantastic. The cast nail it. There's so much fun. There's some great. One of the things that was really sticking out to me as I was watching this, and something that so many modern movies just don't do, and results in them not having a personality. And not that every movie should do it the way this movie does it, because not every movie wants this tone, obviously. But just simple little things, like there's a moment where Marty and Doc are like planning something, right? And even that's actually part of what the appeal of this movie is too, is that Doc's with them on the adventure. You know, he gets to travel with them, and that's part of the excitement of it. But Marty and Doc are planning something, right? It's kind of like the start of Act 3, end of Act 2, depending on where you're defining that split. And Doc's telling him, okay, this is what needs to happen, this is what he's doing. He's thinking it through and giving Marty a bunch of orders. But as he's doing it, he's walking towards the camera and then walking away, like down the road, and then walking back again. And Marty's like following him backwards and forwards. And there's no reason why Doc has to be moving this way. He just is. And it gives the scene this sense of pacing and timing that just feels like full of energy in a way that it would never be. A similar example is there's a guy a little bit later on. It's just redoing the bit from the first movie after Biff gets punched. And we'll get into the plot and all that once we're in spoilers, but let's just say Marty was there and he runs away with something that Biff had him. And there's this guy who goes, I think he took that guy's wallet. I think he took his wallet, right? And that's nothing on its own. But when Biff wakes up, 2 minutes later, he's like, I think he took your wallet. And he turns and says it again. I think he took that guy's wallet. For some reason, the punctuation of having this guy repeat his line at the end of both scenes, it's like a little pacing thing in the edit. It's just like, it just gives you a little thing at the end just to cut on. It has no purpose. It doesn't matter. Like him thinking this, him being so confident and sure that, I think I saw someone take someone's wallet, and I really want to tell everyone that I'm a vigilante. I'm seeing this shit. I'm freaking Batman over here. I'm noticing wallets being stolen. Like I could sit and analyze the shit out of this guy based on 2 lines of dialogue.
It really struck me, having done like student films and stuff, it really struck me as like an inside joke that was going on in the background. Sure. And they were just like, we gotta put it in. Like, we can't not have that.
Oh dear. But yeah. Cast, they're all firing in all cylinders pretty much. With the notable exception that obviously we have one person who didn't come back, which is, George McFly we do technically see a little bit of, but Crispin Glover is not returned. Because he wanted more money, I believe, was the story I heard back in the day.
Yeah, it was more money, and I saw something about like final approval for like his parts of the script or something. Bob Gale was like, no, in fact, we're going to give you less money. So, and to be fair, if the script had to change because of his non-presence, but if the script was anything close to what it was that we saw, like in the first movie, he was essentially the second lead. Like, you can make the argument that it might have been Doc, but I think that the argument could also be made for George. He's nowhere near that close in this movie. To say that he should have the same amount of money, even close to, is just kind of weird for me.
Well, it depends how much it changed after they decided what they were doing with him not going to come back. So that could have, I suspect the middle of the movie would have been different if he was back. I suspect that in the alternate timeline, he would have been more present. I'll just say that without saying anything else.
I'd agree. I think that'd be obvious.
So, all right. I think we'll just say spoilers. Obviously, if you're here, you've probably seen Back to the Future Part 2. It's entirely lately. But we'll get into it and whatnot. Obviously, actually, one other casting thing we have to talk about is Jen has changed dramatically right from the start of the movie. And Elizabeth Shue now plays Jen. We spoke about this last time when we talked about the first movie, about why the actress left, and it was just kind of a sad family story where she went to look after someone. So nothing with ill will, but I will say, ever since I was a kid, and it's nothing against Elizabeth Shue, but I've always seen this Jen as fake Jen. Like
this Jen?
Yeah, as soon as she shows up, I always go, "You're not the real Jen," and I just sort of have to make my peace with it. But I don't like that it's changed.
I get what you're saying.
I miss OG Jen. Okay.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, especially as the first one is like, you know, the first one, it's the OG. But at the same time, if you're talking about Jen as a character, this is where she gets her characterization from. Like the first movie barely spends any time with her, so everything you really know about her as a person comes from this.
No, I mean, yeah, you're right, but I don't care. I still like you're not Jen. You're an imposter.
Fair enough.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, first movie made that impression, and then there's nothing they can do. I think it's especially because they redo like a scene at the start, you know, because they redo the final scene of Back to the Future and they reshoot it completely with her, probably because of her. That's probably why they redid it, is because they had to insert her into it. And because of that, it's like, oh, this isn't right. This is not who I remember. What's going on here? But yeah, so
trying to see who the original was. Claudia Wells.
I mean, I don't think she was stayed on as like a major actor afterwards.
No,
so you probably wouldn't know who she is. Whereas Elizabeth Shue had already been like Karate Kid, and you know, she would go on to do other stuff as well. Was she in Babysitter Diaries? I want to say that was her.
Adventures of Babysitting.
Adventures of Babysitting. That's the one. Yeah,
yep.
That's what I was thinking of. I just get the title wrong. So yeah, the other thing they insert into this scene at the start, of course, is old Biff coming out and like catching the DeLorean flying away. I don't think they'd have had to reshoot the whole thing for this, because this is just like a simple little insert of him just coming out and noticing it. But important for plot reasons that he gets a glimpse of this.
And like, again, it's so densely packed. Everything that they do is hinting at future stuff, because he comes out and he wants to show Marty his new matchbooks that he got for his auto detailing. And like, even something that small comes back later on in the script. It's so well written.
Yeah. It's a sort of thing, though, where you might not even notice that one until you've seen it a few times, because it's such a small detail.
But that's why I love it. This movie is absolutely about the like tiny little Easter eggs and going back and watching it multiple times. And you're like, oh, hey, it's that. And it's not even watching it multiple times just for this movie. It's also, once you've seen part 3, all of the hints they give for like, yeah, we were filming part 3 at the same time, and here's every little hint that we had that we were going there.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's more important that they wrote them together, because they did film them back to back, but not quite at the same time. So, and I imagine that makes sense, because like all the sets for 3 would be very different from 2. So it's not like it's not like, oh, well, we'll run over. I mean, maybe the stuff at the very end of 3 they might have done like while they were doing 2, since they'd be at those locations. But like most of 3's like, oh, we're going out to the desert and we're going to you know, whatever Western backlot they've got in Universal Studios or whatever. Yeah. So yeah, like, so we get I always remember this. I always have nostalgia for the flying through the sky opening titles of this one, because it's just like, oh, hey, we're flying now, right? Yeah, we've got a flying car.
I mean, and no dissing to Huey Lewis and the News with the opening of the first movie, Power of Love, great song, but Back to the Future score just hits that extra little like, yes, this is it. I'm pumped. I love it.
That's so funny you say that, because to me, I don't associate Huey Lewis and the News with the opening titles of Back to the Future 1. I associate the opening titles of 1 with clocks ticking, because that's how it starts.
Yes, but I'm just saying the opening sequence, as we you know, get associated with the characters and all that, the town.
So yeah, they're flying in the sky. It's 2015. Obviously, it's funnier. The further we get past 2015, the more funnier it's going to be to say that. Yeah. But hey, I remember a time when that was still in the future, right?
I remember when it hit. I remember that everybody was going nuts about it. They were like, "Oh yeah, we're getting hoverboards this year. We're getting our Nike Power laces."
Hey, Nike did actually make those.
They did, but like, give it to everybody, man. Come on, don't make it a tiny little thing.
It probably costs a lot to make it happen.
I'm willing to pay. I am willing to pay the $120 it would have taken to make that worth it.
Yeah. So, yeah, obviously Jen starts asking too many questions once she realizes she's in a time machine. Oh, we can see where we get married. We can see what we do. And I love the performance of Christopher Lloyd here, as he's like sort of going, like he's making all these faces as she's asking these questions, and like, oh, I need to put a stop to this right now.
Yeah.
She's asking too much.
Pulls out a neuralizer and just zaps her and just like, well. And I love the background for this. They wrote it well into the story, but the background is obviously, at the end of part 1, they didn't plan on ever making a part 2. So if they were going to make a part 2, they wouldn't have put Jennifer in the car. because they just needed her out of the story, more or less.
It's so funny because like, they do make use of her in the, obviously how they get to the McFly house to like do some of the other plot is through the fact that she's there. But for the most part, it does feel like, I mean, the fact that they don't, like, why wouldn't Doc just leave her in the car? Why did they dump her in the alleyway? Like, that's one of those contrivances that just feel like, just because she has to get found by police to lead to the next part of the plot, right? It makes no sense to me why Doc would say, put her here in the alleyway. Like, why not just leave her in the car? Why is her being in the car going to stop you doing from whatever you're doing while Marty's off doing his part of the mission?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm sure, I was waiting for the reason, and I'm sure they're like, somewhere in the lore of like what he went off to do right then, you can come up with it, but yeah, there's nothing there.
Yeah, I mean, especially since she'd be asleep. I mean, because all we really find out is that he went off to, like, neutralize Marty Jr., right? And one of the things they do establish is that, oh, the reason why Marty Jr. shows up when he's not meant to is because he used most of the juice on Jen. And it's like, so I was like, okay, a little cause and effect there. But they very specifically mimic the, Marty stumbling through the town square from when he arrived in 1955 in the first movie here, but with... oh, it's 2015, and Doc's just giving him the laces and the jacket that self-fits and all that, and gives him the mission, hey, your son's going to agree to do this job with Griff, not Biff, Griff, and you have to say no, and he makes it clear what the mission parameters are. But Marty's stumbling through the town, and we're seeing the fancy cars, we're seeing people wearing absurd outfits, lights are everywhere, the Texaco station's got a big robot like thing on top of it, Jaws 19... all the things everyone remembers from this section of the movie.
Yeah, the only thing, and I noticed this as I was watching it this time, is that whenever we go through the town square, there's always a song of the era playing, except for this time. And obviously, they wouldn't know what future music sounded like. It's better that they don't even try to guess, because otherwise it's just going to sound like 80s pretending to be the future. Yeah. But it does come off as slightly more noticeable here when it's the only time that doesn't happen.
Should have just used some synth. That would have worked.
Yeah, but that is absolutely 80s trying to sound like the future.
But the entire scene is the 80s trying to look like the future, so...
Yeah, that's fair. Here, hold on. I want to look up top song of 2015. What should have been playing? I don't recognize any of these.
Yeah, probably not anything you're seeing in that top 10. I guarantee you.
Uptown Funk by Bruno Mars.
Oh God, no. That would only make the scene worse.
Yeah, that's fair.
That would only make the scene worse. No.
Oh God.
So yeah, all this stuff is fun. Obviously, they were just being playful with this, and there's a lot more effects going on because of all the, the compositing in of the flying cars in the background. And to be fair, I do want to say the shot of the DeLorean landing in the alleyways as it's raining looks pretty good. Like, they did a good job with this.
I am so thrilled with all of their special effect work. And when I say special effect, I mean the practical effects that went in to getting like the DeLorean landing and the multiple copies of people all in the same frame, because it is not like special effects compositing for the most part. Sure, for some of the flying cars you need it, but literally what they did were just in-camera tricks. And they came up with a system, I believe it was called the Vista Glide, which was basically just a camera that was programmed to move in the same exact ways over and over again. And it allowed them to then do the camera splicing of, okay, we're only having the left part of the frame here, right part of the frame here. But it let the camera move in creative ways rather than just keeping everything still on a tripod the whole time. Yeah. And it's so well done. At every point in the movie where they use it, it feels just perfectly made.
Yeah, no, it holds up really well in terms of that. Obviously, there's some stuff with the flying cars and whatnot where you can tell there's some old school effects going on, but it never sticks out in an unpleasant way to me in this movie. Everything kind of feels like they really put a lot of effort into it not getting in the way of the storytelling, just adding to the fun factor. And when something doesn't look completely real, it just kind of has a bit of a charm to it more than anything else. So
yeah, there's the point where just coming up here where Griff and Biff interact, and obviously they're both played by Tom Wilson, the actor, but I'm not even thinking about the fact that they're played by the same actor. I just register as them as two different characters, and there's no point during their interaction where I think, oh, right, that's a bit dodgy, like that part where they got them both on screen. No, it works the whole way through.
Yeah, a little detail here. Obviously, they want to mimic Marty stumbling through the town like he did in the first movie. But Doc specifically says, hey, go to the Cafe 80s, which again, it's the cafe set that's in that same spot as the cafe, the diner from the 50s. Yeah. But he specifically says, here, get a Pepsi. And I thought, why? But of course, it's because he asked for a Pepsi free in 1955, so we get the equivalent of that here, where he asked for a Pepsi, and it comes out in this weird capsule thing that he doesn't know how to open. He's like, what do we do here with this?
Second favorite bit about that line, though, is here, get a Pepsi. Here's $50. Like,
yeah, that made me laugh.
He's like, oh god, that's how much it's going to cost.
Yeah. Well, no, well, it isn't, though, because he had enough left over to buy a book.
That's true. That's very true. But he at least gave him $50 with the expectation of like it's going to cost more than 50 cents that original coffee got you back in the day.
May cost you like $10 for your Pepsi. Yeah.
Yeah. I also apparently this is a background thing, but I saw it in the trivia. Is that they had 4 different types of Pepsi, which was regular, diet, max, and perfect, which I guess is the future version of Pepsi. But the thing is that Pepsi Max didn't exist when this movie was made, and now exists.
Well, it didn't exist in the US. It was here decades before you had it.
1991.
Still decades before you had it.
But after this movie.
Fair enough, but I mean, I would never even have thought twice about hearing that, because Pepsi Max has been here since I was born in 89. It's existed my entire life.
Right. Fair enough. But I'm just saying, this movie did manage to predict that one thing correctly.
Yeah, well, or did Pepsi see that and go, oh, we'll keep that. We'll use that.
That's some good branding. That's take that.
That was so weird, because like when Coke Zero became a thing and everyone was raving about it, like I remember everyone here just being like, "Oh, it's just Coke's version of Pepsi Max." Like that's literally what it was.
Yeah, you gotta understand though, America, we are behind in a lot of ways.
Usually you're ahead on the junk food, though, to be fair.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's just it. This is the thing without sugar. We never even considered that as an option.
It was revolutionary when you finally stumbled onto that. So yeah, obviously, the Jaws 19 thing and all that, and the teasing of the book, and I'm seeing it in the window with the other 80s artifacts, and I love that she like offers him a dustbuster like right after the book as well.
Yeah, like she thinks that the thing that's interesting about this book is the fact that it can collect dust, not the fact that like it's an old sports almanac with all these ancient scores to it.
Also, Doc does mention to Marty, just casually, it's not like a big deal, but he does just sort of mention, oh, Griff's got a couple of problems with his biotic implants, and it never really comes up, or like what exactly he's got or anything, but just that little phrase, biotic implants, is like, okay, yeah, cyberpunk shit, all right.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, to be fair, Doc does... So I never understood this as a kid, and I get it now as an adult, that the reason why they do this is because obviously in the first movie they had Doc in 1985 with a little bit of makeup on to look a bit older, because he's meant to be 30 years older than Doc in the 50s. He doesn't actually look that different, but they did do a little bit. So at the start of this movie, obviously, okay, we've got Doc for the whole movie now, but we don't want to have him in the older makeup the whole time. So we're going to just give him a reason to why he looks like he does in the 50s again. And he comes up with this thing where he pulls off the fake mask like a Scooby-Doo villain and says, oh, I went to like a future spa and I got like my face done, and they replaced my spleen.
Added 30 to 40 years to my life, so it justifies him being that young anyway.
So, and he's like, oh, you look great, Doc. And it is just kind of like all right, I don't know if I needed the explanation for this. I would have just rolled with it. I wouldn't have cared.
I would have rolled with it too, but here's the thing. Watching it and, like you said, not knowing why they did it earlier on, I thought it was like a joke. I thought the joke was he doesn't look any different. I thought it was this sort of thing of just like, oh, okay, he did this thing, and like Marty's just like, yeah, you look great, Doc. How much did you pay for that?
I just love the casual reference that he got his spleen replaced, because like, because that's definitely not a normal thing.
That's the first thing to go.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, because like there is an implication here. Well, Doc was going to 2015 at the end of the first movie. There's a small implication here that because he's got a paper from the next day that shows what happens to Marty's son. He also says, oh, I've already been ahead and seen what happens, and it all traces back to this day, which kind of implies that he's been even further ahead and seen, oh shit, the McFly family goes to complete shit.
Yeah, I mean, that's even what he says in the thing when he's explaining it. He's like, this single event is the launch point of your entire family unraveling. And so it's implied that, like, yeah, he's been down at least like another couple years to see how bad everything got for them, which I also... This is my tiny little thing, just in terms of Doc Brown's rationality of this movie, is that he's willing to change this moment. He's willing to say this, despite the fact this is how the timeline plays out normally, he's willing to change this moment. But in all other instances, he's like, nope, can't change anything. We shouldn't be interfering. It's like the future just doesn't matter. It doesn't count because it is the future.
Yeah, it's not the past, so therefore you're allowed to change it, kind of thing.
Right.
Which, yeah, it's just one of those little imperfections where you just have to go with it because it gets the movie going.
Right.
Little contrivance.
Yeah. But like that one doesn't even feel like a contrivance. That just feels like Doc Brown sees the future as less written in stone, which we do get later on in the trilogy, but still.
Well, yeah, but which is a bias though, because he comes from his time period. But to the people in the future, it's, you know, like the people in 2015 is set in stone.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, it's weird. It's weird. It's the ethics of being a time traveler, because when you're not a time traveler, you don't have to worry about how you're impacting the future, because that's just how time works. You do things and it'll affect things. But when you're a time traveler and you weren't meant to be there, that's where things get sticky. And it's why Doc ultimately wants to destroy the time machine as the movie goes on. And obviously they then have to fix everything. So blah, blah, blah. But what I like to hear about the implication, though, about him going further, is that this spa that he talks about, where he replaced like half of his body and got 40 years on his life, it sounds too futuristic for even this 2015. Which is why I like the implication that he's went much further ahead and seen how badly the McFly family's gone, because it leaves me, it's very open to interpretation, but it makes me think, oh, you've been like another 50 years ahead, you've been 100 years ahead, you've been into like super cyberpunk times, and that's where you got all this work done.
Yeah, well, I will say that when the 30th anniversary of Back to the Future came out, which obviously this is 30 years ahead, so it is 2015, they did come out with a little, I think it was a short film, that was basically Doc went ahead to the 2040s, so 30 years after 2010, and he saw that because of things like hoverboards and bionic implants, stuff like that, and like all this other stuff, Mr. Fusions and whatnot, humanity was basically doomed in 2040. Like everything was going wrong and we were like going down a bad path. So Doc went back to the 2000s, 2010s and whatnot, and changed the timeline to what we actually have for real nowadays.
Yeah, I'm not counting that as canon, though. That's just a fun joke.
Yeah, absolutely. But that was their little explanation of like, why don't I have a hoverboard in 2015? Well, it's because Doc made it so it didn't happen.
Yeah, that's a fun meta joke, but that's not part of the movie.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, the whole plan is to go to the diner and confront Biff. So, but instead of encounter his own father, he encounters old Biff. Who recognizes him as his son, right? So he starts saying, "Oh, your old man's a loser," and things like. He's like, "Wait, what? I'm not a rock star." Well, go on, Biff. Tell me more.
That's the other bit. But when they're getting out of the car, Marty's just like, "So Doc, like, I know I'm rich, but am I like super rich?" And Doc's just like, how about we focus on the mission?"
Yeah, which actually this is going to lead me, because it's introduced here along with the. I mean, the video game thing with the young Elijah Wood, we'll just mention that. It's like you have to use your hands. It's like a baby's toy, but it's a Western game, which is important for next movie.
And it shows that Marty is an absolute crack shot. He is very good with the gun.
Very important, yes. Honestly, of all the things that tease what part 3 is going to be, this is probably my least favorite of them, but it's all right. I mean, it's fun enough. But like, I think the other ones later are more interesting and feel like more natural sort of.
I don't know.
Things.
I felt like this one felt natural because, you know, Cafe 80s, and it was the fact that it was an 80s arcade game. Like, the fact that it was about the Old West is, if you didn't know the Old West was coming up, it kind of wouldn't make a difference.
No, I agree. I'm just saying that I think the other ones feel like, you know, when you're teasing that Biff had a grandfather in the Old West who was like an outlaw, or the watching of A Fistful of Dollars, and like that actually playing into the plot next movie because Marty remembers it from the film. Anyway, but we're going to get to actually my least favorite writing thing in the sequels here. Okay. Which
is it his new character trait?
Yes. All of a sudden, Marty McFly hates being called a chicken, and it is. Yeah. It does feel really tacked on to me, because like, okay, they need this thing to make him react a certain way multiple times, and it's obviously it's an arc as well, because by the end of the third movie, he's going to not fall for it. He's going to like resist the urge to prove himself. When it's nothing bad, nothing good can come of it. But all of a sudden, if he gets called a chicken, the music stings like dun dun dun, and he's like, "What'd you call me? No one calls me a chicken. Nobody." Like, all right, okay, I don't know. There's
I get what you're saying.
There's not a hint of it in the first movie, and it does feel like, oh, we needed to give him something to get over in the sequel, so we came up with this. You know, it doesn't detract from the movie that much for me, but I will say that as I've grown up and I've been more aware of writing and stuff like that, this is the one thing in the sequels that I actively think is, okay, this is a crutch just to make it work. You know?
I don't think that it is relevant to the plot. I think that, yes, they use it to make certain plot things happen, but they could have made that happen any way they wanted. The fact that they use this recurring motif, I think, is much more to the point that Marty does not have anything to allow him to have an arc. If you look at his like character traits in the first movie, his entire being was just fish out of water. Like, there's nothing to really change or get better at within that point. He can't improve as a person.
He did in the first movie, because the arc was that he learned to sort of respect his parents as actual human beings and not just his parents that he doesn't respect, right? So like there was an arc there, but obviously we've done that now. So, you know, he has to. So, I mean, obviously this idea, like, I mean, you could argue there's maybe an interesting thing to do with him expecting to be successful and not being successful, and just like him accepting that not being special is maybe important. Could have been an interesting arc over the two movies. But, you know, they went with the simpler thing of like, no, the reason why he's not successful is because he gives in when anyone calls him a chicken, and it always leads to something bad because it's, you know.
Yeah. If we had to specifically go with any sort of character flaw, I think it's strange because we have this book, obviously, the Gray's Almanac, that we get to, and it shows this level of expectation that, like, you know, he wants to be rich, he wants to be famous and all that. He has this expectation for ways to get his life into a certain way. I think that could have been something that they could have massaged into a storyline for him of, like, even when we get to part 3, without saying too much about it, we could have had him set up, like, you know, a stock return or something like that, something that he could have gotten back in 85 and become rich off of. But the fact is, regardless of what we set up here, there's nothing that would have been present in the first movie that would have been able to continue onwards. No matter what we did, it would have been something new set up here.
Yeah, but that's the thing. This is something that's, like, seemingly he's always had, it just never came up before.
Right.
Whereas I think you could have had something new set up that comes out of, like, him learning about his future, and maybe that, you know, I'm going to be kind of a loser at a dead end job that I don't like, and, you know, that could inspire the attitude that needs to have the growth over the two movies. Yeah. So I think the chicken thing feels a little bit ham-fisted, and like every time I watch the sequels, that first time it happens in the diner here, when the music stings and he's like, what did you call me? No one calls me a chicken. And I'm like, all right, okay. Right. It's honestly, if I'm saying what's my biggest negative of this movie, and indeed both sequels really, it's the chicken thing.
I get it. I think I'm more okay with it in concept. Like, I would have been fine with him having to feel like he has to prove himself when anybody calls him out. I think the negative comes from the sting and the fact that they always play it this, like, over the top way of showing him like his eyes go wide and he turns around and he's all pissed off. If he had just reacted in a way of like, okay, yeah, I'll go ahead and do it, and they change up how he reacts each time to show, like, maybe it gets stronger at points, maybe it gets weaker at points, but having it play with that predictable sting each time is what makes it a recognizably missing thing from the first movie, rather than just a character trait that wasn't really called out in the first movie.
No, you may have a point there. If they played it a bit more nuanced, it perhaps could have worked as something that was introduced here, but it does feel like, no, if it was this blatant, the way he reacts every time, it's weird that it never came up before. So
I will say I was paying attention during when we watched the first movie, if anybody called him chicken, if anybody called him out as being a coward. No, it didn't come up. So at least they didn't do something that actively worked against what they set up prior.
If only it was Slacker, because that definitely came up.
Oh yeah, that was absolutely.
Let's just say he had a problem with a Slacker. I love later on, actually, when he meets the principal in the alternate timeline, and he's like, "Oh, Principal Strickland," and he's like, "What? You're like a slacker?" And he's like, "Yes, I'm a slacker. Slacker, remember me? Slacker, Slacker
yes,
McFly."
That's absolutely what I am. 100%. Please do not shoot me.
So yeah, obviously that stuff with Griff plays out. Griff is big, is mean. he's a bit more animated than Biff was in the 50s, but he's definitely an evolution of it.
Tom Wilson was having so much fun.
Oh, he was doing well.
He's going nuts with the character of Griff.
Yeah, and now Griff's bullying Biff the same way that Biff would bully others back when he was his age. So you've got all that playing out. You've got a young Marty McFly Jr. coming in, so Marty has to hide, and then eventually Marty McFly Jr. gets punched over the counter, so Marty grabs his hat and sort of like, okay, I'll take over now. So he tries to act tough with Griff. And also, I don't know if I've ever quite clocked how often it's happened, but the running gag in these three movies of what's that over there working to trick Biff is hilarious, or in Griff in this case, but the entire family line, and even his cronies later on get tricked by it. So something about these bad guys getting tricked with what's that?
It's only because Michael J. Fox sells it so well. He's actually like, Jesus Christ.
So that stuff's great. And I think it's really smart as well that a lot of the, I know we obviously actually visit the events of the first movie later, but I don't think those are played for hey, remember how cool this moment was? It's all very mechanical and how it's functioning in the plot, and it makes it interesting. I think what's so smart about doing all the direct, we're going to mimic this moment from the first one with him going through the town, and we're going to mimic the skateboard chase here with the hoverboard, is that they're using it in two smart ways. One, doing it all in the first act means you get it all out your system, and then the movie goes from there and it feels like it's allowed to be its own movie at that point. But two, it's also smart how they use it, because they're using it to show how things have changed in 2015, because it's he goes to the diner, but here's the TVs are the things that are serving people now for whatever reason, and they're freaking out and malfunctioning. He goes to do the skateboard thing. Well, I'll take your hoverboard. What's this? And obviously the fun of the hoverboard is born, and all that. So
yeah, if you go back to the first movie, a major thing that comes up is, like you said, he learns to respect and relate to his parents, and there's this idea that the things that they went through are the same sort of things that you go through. The names are different, the situations are different, but the underlying problems and things that happen are the same. You take that to its logical limit, when the next generation happens, it's all going to happen again. It's all going to be very similar sort of problems. And so they mirror that in a very obvious way to say the things that happen to the parents happen to the children over and over and over again.
Yeah, that's what makes it sort of recurring motifs rather than sort of lazy referencing it. The whole point is that you're recognizing the things play out with slight differences based on whatever it is. So we get the big chase, and of course he eventually gets pushed out onto the water with some dodging, and something about the way the guy yells, "Those birds don't work on water," is just ingrained into my brain. It's like a line of dialogue that I can hear.
Oh, okay. I actually have the next guy's line ingrained in my head of unless you got power.
They're both pretty good, but the way he yells that just is stuck in my brain since I was a kid. It's there, and we get the over the top performance from Wilson as he pulls out this big case and walks with intention. So he's got a rocket powered hoverboard that can go in water.
Yep.
And Marty basically jumps in the water, gets wet to dodge them, and they go flying into the courthouse, which completely, changes the timeline. They get arrested for that. So the job that they were trying to pull his son into never happens. All done well. We should probably mention as well the Cubs were in the World Series thing, because even though I do not care about that sport whatsoever, the fact that this weird prediction that the Cubs, after 100 years of losing, would finally win the World Series, the fact that it happened 1 year off 2015 is really funny.
It is. I kind of want, I understand they're all going for their best. Everybody wants to win this stuff, but I kind of wish the MLB would just silently come to the, we're all going to throw the games and we're going to let the Cubs win. We're just going to make that happen.
They all want to win too much. So that's the problem.
I know. None of it's worth the reference for them, but God damn it would have made me happy.
It would have been funny. But even just being 1 year off though is insanely wild.
The only thing it was missing is having it be against Miami, which also could have happened.
What's actually really good about it though is, of course, it's not just a joke for the sake of a joke here. It's actually setting up the idea of sports results and sporting results being something you can this is 100 to 1 odds. No one would have predicted this outcome. But if you knew about it, in hindsight, you could make a lot of money, which is obviously is part of the spark of Marty getting the almanac and wanting to take that. So no, I love that, because in the first movie we had that whole scene where Doc finds the letter that Marty wrote and he's like, what's the meaning of this? And while Doc's getting outraged, you're on Marty's side because Marty's trying to save his life. Like, he's doing it for the right reasons. I love that here we get to see an example of that scene, but no, Marty's just being a little shit and he is doing something he's not supposed to, and Doc's like calling him out on it, so you're just completely on his side here.
I love Doc goes into all of like the philosophical and scientific things. He's just like, oh, we should be doing all this and trying to figure out for the greatest question, why? And Marty's like, hey, I'm in for it. Why? How? But also we could make some money. Like, he doesn't see it as like completely ruining the point of it all.
Yeah, we could do both. Like, both can happen. Yeah. So yeah, fun stuff. But obviously, while they're having this debate, they notice Jennifer getting picked up by two police ladies who have got fingerless gloves on. I just always remember that costume detail.
That's the future.
Yeah, and they even comment, because they take her fingerprint, like, whoa, she's 47, she's looking good for that age. So that leads us...
Which kind of goes further into proving your point of Doc must have gone even further in the future to get that happening.
Yeah, because technically, if Doc can look 30 years younger, which is effectively what happened, then in theory, this should not be that weird that she looks this good for 47.
Yeah.
I'll admit that it's a little scary now as I'm getting older, that I'm getting closer to the age that like Marty and Jen are in 2015 than they were in 85.
See, that's the one thing though that I understand from a makeup perspective of, you want these people to look old as if normal people get old,
but they look too old.
They look too old, but that's also just because like Michael J. Fox does not age the same way we do. Elizabeth Shue does not age the same way we do. They are Hollywood celebrities. They are going to look better.
That's true. But like, even normal people, like, that was the thing that stuck out on this viewing for me, is when we go to the house and we see older Marty, and I was like, he looks like he's pushing 60 with this makeup, not 47.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like, if he's meant to be 47, like, he should, like, I'm only 12 years away from that. I'm not going to look as old as he does in this movie in 12 years. Yeah. So maybe it's just a part of getting old and being more aware of what these ages actually look like, because I see more people at that age, generally speaking. But I'm like, oh yeah, like they overshot that a little bit. But I mean, whatever. Like, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, but it's just an observation now as I'm getting older and noticing that.
Yeah. So while Doc is giving the whole laydown on like the scientific and stuff like that, they keep on shouting around the words like, I didn't invent time travel for this, time travel for that. And then old Biff, who noticed the flying DeLorean land, remembered the opening scene of the movie. He hears it all and he's like, they got a time machine.
Yeah.
I'm going to take advantage of that.
Yeah, and there's even a moment where Doc, they're flying to Marty's place, and he's like, oh shit, the skyway's jammed, it's going to take us forever to get there. And he's like, oh, I thought there was a taxi following us. You know, he sort of notices that a little bit. The Biff's probably in pursuit. And to be fair, Marty... It's actually Marty's fault, not just because he bought the book, right, that Biff ends up obviously taking out the trash and like going back with, but it's also his fault because Doc tells him to stay with the car when they land at his neighborhood, and he doesn't. Like, he gets distracted and, like, you know, wanders off, and I'm like, if he just stayed with the car, old Biff would never have had a chance of doing this.
Nope. I mean, Marty does have that realization later on, not even about staying with the car, but just like, Biff did his plan. Biff was listening to the entirety of his plan and just did it anyway.
And don't get me wrong, that's the more important side of this, is the idea that the damage it could do if someone been able to make money this way. Like, he learns that lesson, obviously, and he feels guilty about it. But even just in the moment, if he just listened to Doc and stayed with the car, it actually wouldn't have happened either anyway.
Yeah, true.
Which does lead to the big plot hole that everyone points out, and I'm going to bring it up here. But especially since Doc explains this later in the movie, which is... Later on, when they're in the alternate timeline, Doc specifically says, we can't go back to 2015 from here, because we'll go to the 2015 that follows on from this alternate 1985. Right? We have to go back and past. However, old Biff here comes back to 2015 after he's given the book to young Biff, and he comes back to this 2015. In theory, this DeLorean should never come back, and Marty and Doc should be stranded here, going by the movie's own time travel rules.
Okay. I've thought about that.
I'm sure you have. I can't wait to hear it.
So my theory comes down to how vaguely defined the term ripple effect is. And my thought process is, okay.
Before you explain this, I just want to say, if we're starting off with like the vagueness of something as being your crutch to this, I'm just going to say there's an air over all of this right from the start.
Absolutely. 100%. I am not claiming to be the definitive source here, but this is my thought process, is that it took a week in real life moving time for Marty messing up his parents' marriage for him to start fading away. Theoretically, if he handed the book over to Biff and then just immediately got out of Dodge, there is a chance that whatever this ripple effect is, because he was going 60 years into the future, that he could have outpaced it. He could have gotten ahead of it, stayed in his own timeline, and then, as it's a deleted scene, it's not in the movie, but we see him start. Yeah, we see him start to fade away in this timeline, and that would be the ripple effect then catching up to them.
I do think it was a mistake to take that out, honestly, because that would have at least, even if you thought, well, that didn't make sense because it should have already happened from the perspective of 2015. But at the very least, it would say, okay, you know what, the changes didn't take effect until after he came back. You see him fading away. I think it would at least partially answer it, but for whatever reason, they chose to not keep it in. We see him get when he gets out of the DeLorean, he's in pain, as if he is going to fade away, but you don't quite see it. I do think they should have kept that in there just to answer this question somewhat, as to why does this work when Doc clearly says that if you travel to the future from now, it'll be the new timeline that you're traveling in, not the original timeline. So, it's worth mentioning. I do think it's probably the biggest plot hole of the trilogy.
Yeah, I mean, if you're really going in on it, there is this weird sort of, it's an in-between between there just being one straight timeline, like only one timeline that exists, because that would explain things like fading away and all that stuff, is there only being one. But then they also say how there's branching timelines, and there's like the ability for them to still maintain memories of older timelines even after they switch over to new ones. So it's this weird in-between of fuzziness where the rules are either one or the other depending on what the situation requires it to be.
I don't think it's so much a branching. I mean, I know Doc draws it like a branch, but I think the original line is gone now. Like, now that it is just a straight line, effectively.
Right.
Right?
But then they still maintain, like, the memories of such. They don't get folded into this new reality.
Doc specifically says that's only the time travelers. That's only him, Marty, and Einstein, because they're the ones that have actually traveled through it. And I guess technically Jen, if she ever wakes up.
Nah, she's out.
But yeah, like I think that's the idea, is that like they remember it because they are kind of paradoxical because they've came from this alternate timeline. But I don't think the idea is that both timelines are existing at the same time.
But see, then that's the weird part for me, is they remember it because of their paradox stuff, but still Marty can fade from existence. So like memories are okay to stay, but their bodies themselves are not. That's where it gets into that weird little like blurry area.
Well, yeah, I mean, forgetting him fade away in the first movie, even just in this one, it's like Marty comes back and it's like he's replaced the one that's supposed to be here. You know,
honestly, I'm not sure if that's the case, because they specifically say that one's in Switzerland. I feel like they wrote that far away in order to make it so like nobody could verify whether or not he was actually there.
True, but I would assume he replaces him. Otherwise, like this Doc, Marty are just like extras that just exist outside of any timeline now.
And that's honestly what I'm thinking. But yeah, it's
they never clarify it either way. So
they don't.
You know, it's
I think the timeline has to exist in a sense where they go to the future and disappear from a timeline, quote unquote, so that then they can come back to it and reappear and continue on with that one's life.
Yeah. I suppose there's also an argument here of like they should also fade away because they are not the Marty and Doc that would now exist because of the past. And that is also kind of a time travel rule, murky, almost plot hole that we just don't want to get into, because, like, no, we want this Marty and Doc. That's not the point of the movie, so let's just move on and forget about it.
The lines of, like, again, single timeline or branching timeline, they exist somewhere in this middle ground where it gets real blurry, and you just have to accept the rules as they're presented.
Yeah, I think the Biff thing, though, does feel like a plot hole just because it specifically goes against what Doc says later in the movie. Like, he says that clearly, and this kind of goes against it. But, again, the movie's great and fun, and everything else is firing on all cylinders, so there's no reason to like let it get you down, but it is worth mentioning, and it is something that is there. So there's a plot hole in the third one as well, although the one in the third movie isn't that big a deal, because if they'd just written in one line of dialogue, it would have fixed it, but I'll save that for next time.
All right, fair enough.
Obviously. So we're not talking about that one yet. So yeah, we got all the antics in the house. Old Marty being fired because Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers makes him do something illegal, and he gets fired for it.
By the way, this is Jennifer's like sneaking around the house because she doesn't want to be seen at this point.
Yeah, she has a little moment first when she's on her own where she's like is seeing like the glitching like blind / TV screen that's flickering, and she's freaked out with no door handles and all. It's not quite an air fryer, but they were getting there with this hydration device that they use for the pizza.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, that was the other thing. That was the thing of Doc went to the future because all of the dehydrated pizza and stuff like that made humanity just morbidly obese.
It's too easy to get fat.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, that does feel like it's a problem that's continuously.
Well, I mean, escalating. I know if me personally, I would totally buy one of those dehydrated pizzas and just eat it like normally, and then it would just go inside.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, so, and you've got like this other actor playing George, but he's hanging upside down as well as the old age makeup just to obscure him as much as possible so you can never tell that it's not actually Crispin Glover. I think you can tell because of the voice, but...
I mean, he's already supposed to be 30 years older. Obviously, Leia Thompson's throwing on an extra voice as well to be more frail old woman, so I think it works. Yeah.
So, all that stuff is fun. You've also got Michael J. Fox playing his own teenage daughter as well. So, yeah, you got all this going on, and Jennifer's freaking out, seeing it all and hiding in the closet. And she gets to witness Marty get called a chicken, which is what makes him do the illegal thing that gets him fired in the first place. So she witnesses this. She even hears Marty's mum talk about how, 30 years ago he got into a car accident because someone called him a chicken, and that's obviously setting something up for next movie.
She gives the entire backstory. She's like, he was baited by being called a chicken. He got into a car accident with like a Rolls Royce. The person sued. He also damaged his hand. So therefore, all of those things kind of just set him down this path of he's massively in debt and also doesn't get to achieve his dreams.
Yeah, he actually picks up a guitar at one point, and Jennifer sees him try to play Power of Love.
Yep.
And it doesn't, it kind of, it's not terrible, but it's obviously not quite the confidence that he once had. So, yeah. No, it's all interesting enough stuff. And then eventually Doc appears at the window and is like, go out the front door. It's a thumb scanner. Just scan your thumb and it'll let you out. But it's right at that moment where old Jennifer comes in and they both faint at the sight of each other, which is just it's just funny.
Which that was Doc's original thing at the beginning when he saw the police taking her. He was like, well, there's one of two options. Either A, they'll see each other and go into shock and pass out, or B, our entire galaxy will be enveloped in a black hole because of the resulting contact.
Actually, to be more precise, he said the entire universe, and then he said, oh no, I might be overshooting that. It might just be limited to our own galaxy, to which Marty says, oh, that's a relief.
Yeah.
Well, that's the reason why I remember that, is because, that's a relief after he scales it down to just galaxy.
Oh, yeah, it'll be fine. Don't worry about it.
It's all good stuff. And obviously, Biff's back at this point, stumbles out of the DeLorean, and they're like, okay, we got Jennifer back, let's go home. Although, not to gloss over a line here that I love, which is Doc's going to dismantle the time machine, and he's like, okay, I'm finally going to, devote my time to a pursuit of the other great mystery of the universe. And he just goes, women. And he says it in such an endearing way that I just, I can't help but love it.
And honestly, it's kind of also set up for the third movie.
Yeah, this idea that Doc wants a love life, he wants to find a partner. That's something that comes up in the next one. So
something that I just realized this go around of watching this movie, all of that future stuff, the entirety of it, is in the first 40 minutes of this movie. We still have another hour to go, and that is insane to me, how much of an impact those first 40 minutes made on culture as a whole.
Is it even far? I thought it was like 30 minutes by the time they're on their way back.
I mean, depends on how you count it. I'm going by just runtime of the movie as a whole. It's 39 minutes flat where it gets him into
fair enough. Yeah, that's how I'd
DeLorean.
count it. I just, but yeah, I was thinking it was only like 30 minutes, so yeah, fair enough. Yeah, like they come back and then this is where there's some little because when Marty goes into the wrong house and this family's there and they scream at him and he has to duck the baseball bat and all that, Like, as he's walking away and he sees, like, you know, the crime scenes and, like, how bad the neighborhood is, like, part of me did think, yeah, but you also drove in here. Did you not see, like, any of this on the way in?
That's what I kind of liked. Yeah. If you think back to the first movie, you remember how pristine and everything was in the town square. And then he gets back and, like, there's a homeless guy. There's trash everywhere. Like, it wasn't great to begin with.
Sure.
But then, he notices the tiny little things. Like, when they're dropping off Jennifer outside of her house, he looks back at the window just like, I don't remember there being bars on the window. That's new.
Yeah. Anyway, enjoy this little bench, Jennifer, because you're going to be here until the end of the next movie.
Yep.
Because they didn't want to do anything with you as a character. So
it's sad in a way, but also, hey, at least they didn't like force you into this movie and you became a character that was hated because of it.
I mean, I think it's just clear though, like Marty and Doc are the stars of the show, right? They were in the first movie, they're the stars here, and it would have maybe been a hindrance. And like, obviously you want to keep seeing different versions of Lorraine, different versions of Biff, because they are fun to explore. Especially, I mean, this is, if anything, as important as Biff is in the first movie, this is very much Biff's movie. Is it out of the three of them? This is the one where he gets to do, like, he gets to play Griff, he gets to play old Biff, he gets to play young Biff again, he gets to play alternate timeline, middle-aged Biff, who's like basically Donald Trump. I mean,
oh my God, this movie hits so much harder.
I know, it's so funny.
This is an election day, Pete. The day this is going out is the election day. God damn it.
Someone check for an almanac in his jacket pocket.
Yeah.
Someone check for the almanac. Because Marty obviously stumbles. He has the encounter with Principal Strickland just to sort of show how bad things are. And he sees that the date's right. Because he's like, oh, this must be the wrong year. And then he looks at the newspaper and it's like, no, October 1985. Oh, shit.
Can you just imagine, like, his relief and also massive confusion if this were 1986?
Like, oh man,
what
all
this happened in 1 year? Jesus Christ, the Russians must have done something.
Well, imagine you time travel from 2019 to sometime in the future and went back to 2020. You'd be like, wait, why are the streets empty? What's happening?
Why is everybody inside? What's going on? Why can't I buy toilet paper?
But he stumbles into the town square, and do you know what? Honestly, like, it's obviously it would be right, but they've done such a good job of like changing the town square for this alternate timeline that up until you see the columns or the video mentions, oh, like Biff's tower is actually the clock tower that's been changed into a tower. I don't think I even realize it is the town square. I just think it's some dingy part of the town.
The only reason I realized it was the town square beforehand is because they do that shot where like he's walking into the square and he's like looking around and they do like the pull out at the same time.
It's the same
and
shot,
just from a visual language, it's the same exact one.
No, absolutely. The evidence is there. It's just like, I don't think as a kid I realized it was the exact same place. I just assumed it was somewhere else in the town. But there's bikers everywhere. It's, you know, there's barrels of fire. It looks like a, you know, complete pit. But then you've got this big tacky tower that had with neon lights saying Biff at the top, and like the bottom
He's
floors,
literally lighting a cigar off of burning money on the logo.
The bottom floor is like the museum of Biff, and it's explaining how he became a millionaire at 21 as soon as he could start gambling, and he helped legalize gambling in the US apparently in every state. Yeah, by the sounds of it.
There was a point back prior to 2015 where I watched this movie. And I said, okay, so he has a lot of money and he got lucky, but like, I don't understand why that would mean America would hand over power to this horrible, horrible man. I'm sad now.
Of all the things this movie predicted about this time period, you know, 2015-ish, you know, the fact that Biff being kind of a warning of Trump is really funny in a sad way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's, you know, that's maybe what it is. 2015, they just got it wrong by 1 year. Everything happened in 2016.
Everything happened in 2016. The Cubs won the World Series, and then we had this. This is also where it shows, oh, you know, Biff's grandfather was Mad Dog Tannen, and he was the fastest gun in the West or whatever. So they did all this. But the Three Stooges, right? Biff's men, who is Billy Zane's back. Notably here because in the future, Griff's Stooges weren't the same actors. It was like three different Stooges. Whereas here, and then when we go back to the 50s, it's the little trio that he had in the first movie. So you got Billy Zane, you got 3D, and then the third one.
I mean, you're right. Also, this is Billy Zane started getting like actual roles as well, but apparently he was like so pumped to come back to the Future. He was like, yeah, despite the fact I am an actual somewhat name now, I'll totally show back up as random goon.
Oh yeah, I respect him for it. It's the opposite of Crispin Glover being too big for it now. He's like, oh, I want more money. And now Billy Zane's like, oh yeah, I'll come back and do a few days as this guy.
Billy Zane saw into the future and he saw what his career aspects were in 2015.
He looked into a mirror and saw the poster for the Phantom staring back at him and went, oh, I'll do more Back to the Future while I can.
Look, I know I have Titanic. I'll get there eventually, but for right now, I'll take what I can.
Hey, to be fair, Titanic was after? No, I think Phantom may have been a year after Titanic. Yeah, I think it was 98. Maybe?
I'm looking it up, but
maybe
Phantom doesn't even show up in the top, like,
it's either a year before or after Titanic. Depending on which way around it was. Researching.
Phantom.
It's happening.
It literally doesn't show up in, like, the first 15 results.
What do you mean? Results of what? Just put Phantom
IMDb.
movie.
Yeah. Phantom of the Opera, The Phantom Menace. All these other ones show up first.
Oh my god.
96 was Phantom.
Right, so a year before Titanic. Jesus. All right, David, for future reference, when you're looking up a movie, just use Google, type in the movie, and start writing the year, and it'll autofill the one you're thinking of. I promise you.
Or I could just not do the research. You could easily do that as well, Pete.
Well, you're the one that's just not doing it. I was wanting to move on.
Fair enough. The other thing that happens during that sequence with the Stooges is that we get the reveal that he did end up marrying Lorraine.
Oh yeah, that's the part where Marty like screams as if he's in a horror movie. He's like, no!
I'm not calling him daddy.
So actually, this is one of the moments. Like I said, most of the stuff where it mimics the first movies in that opening like half hour or so. But there is one more where it's him waking up and he hears his mum's voice, and it mimics that moment where he's waking up in the bed in the first movie, and it turns out, and he thinks, oh, that was just a dream. I didn't travel through time. That's my mum taking care of me. And we do that again, except when he wakes up, she's in this tacky ass dress, and she's been enhanced, shall we say. As he puts it, she's so big. Which they do reference again in the next scene, actually.
Here's the thing. From Marty's perspective, from the audience perspective, we all get it. We absolutely understand. From the mom's perspective, this must be horrifically awkward.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I was just like, oh, yeah, my teenage son wakes up and just continues to stare at my breasts.
Very, very confused, probably, I imagine. She kind of just tanks it and moves on without even reacting to it, though. I guess she's just assuming that he's woozy from the concussion that he got, which apparently happens a lot, because she says at one point, oh, they must have hit you hard this time in the head. Yeah. So
it must have been a lot harder this time around. And then, I mean, they might have honestly gone into it, but then that's when they get the Biff coming into the room. And
Biff comes in looking super tacky as well. Pissed off, he keeps spending money on Marty. He's supposed to be in Switzerland at a boarding school. Just completely awful and all the rest of it. And it gets a little bit dark here, actually, where Biff punches Lorraine, or pushes her down, and then punches Marty in the stomach. And it does kind of feel like, obviously in the first movie, Biff was this threat to Marty in the 50s, and he was this kind of thing, but I think there's something interesting here about having the middle-aged Biff, who we also met at the start of the first movie, bullying his father. Having him just like throw a punch to Marty felt really menacing, because it felt like, oh no, this is like the middle-aged man beating up a teenager. This actually feels quite severe and dark. It really sells Biff as like a villain here.
Yeah, if you go back to pre-timeline change Biff, back at the beginning of the first movie, his biggest thing was he was just basically using George to do reports for like a bigger boss. Like he was still just like a middle management sort of guy. He was a bully, but he wasn't actively cruel in any meaningful ways. But then jump forward to this is Biff if he never had any restraints whatsoever. If he was able to do whatever he wants, and he just wants to be this cruel all the time.
Yeah, he knows Lorraine doesn't want to be with them and just blackmails her into it. I'll cut off your kids. I won't give them any more money. And your entire family will end up behind bars like your brother. That's our one reference to Jailbird Joey is this line from Biff. Which,
poor Joey.
I actually, I liked it, because I remember in the first movie, one of my big things that I wanted to talk about with that one, and I think it's mostly just the first movie, but the idea that there is a little bit of subtext, and it's about kind of the older generation can learn or sorry, the older generation can learn from the younger generation, but the younger generation also has stuff to learn from them too. But it's this idea of like, there's maybe a little bit of subtext about letting go of the old ways and letting the young generation drive us forward a little bit. And maybe that's even a little sly reaction to the Reagan presidency in those years.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. I don't think it's as heavy here, but I do think there's maybe an interesting... thinking about that and taking it forward, that this movie's kind of about the old generation trying to claw its power back with like this kind of at a meta level with Biff here. Like, no, like Marty changed the future for the better, but then the old generation like clawed it back because it wouldn't accept this like happier future that was better for everyone. Like they had to be in more power again. There's a little bit there still, I think.
I mean, even if you look at it from just a literal viewpoint, you have the older generation taking the successes that the younger generation made and claiming them for themselves, literally sending it back through time and saying like, no, this is the thing I'm taking now. So it doesn't let that younger generation have any of its successes in the first place. Yeah.
So I don't see any of these themes like carrying into the third one, but I'll keep an eye out for them when we're watching it when that time comes, because I think it's interesting. I think when I first sort of noticed those themes and try to think about Back to the Future with a little bit of an extra layer to it, because it was already perfect anyway, but having that little extra layer of it saying something also just, makes it a little bit even more perfect. So seeing those themes maybe carry forward into the sequels is kind of cool too. So yeah, Marty's like, wait, how could you leave Dad for him? What happened? And she's like, leave your dad? Are you okay, Marty? It's like, how hard did they hit you? He's in the same place he's been for the last 12 years. The cemetery is like, dun, dun, dun.
It's something I really noticed. In this scene, it came to the full forefront, but like it's been present throughout this movie, is how much they make Michael J. Fox just drunkenly stumble around for his scenes. Like he is very energetic with all of his physical movements. Like, as he's going through this graveyard, he's like, oh God, where am I supposed to go? Like he's all over the place rather than just walking.
Oh, I love it. I love the performance, like the physical performance of both him and Doc. The faces they pull, the way they overreact to things. Like this is not a movie that's supposed to be super grounded. Like it takes its character seriously, but they get to do these little flourishes, and little embellishments of things that just add so much character to the movie as a whole, and that's exactly the sort of thing we're talking about. So he goes to the cemetery, sees his father's grave. It's a whole thing. Doc at this point shows up and he's like, hey, I learned about your father, I figured you'd come here. And this sort of, okay, they're reunited, our two heroes are together again, let's like form a plan to fix this hellhole. Like what's going on? So we get Doc's infamous explanation and trying to like piece together what's happened here and what's going on, which is that, okay, old Biff stole the time machine, went back in time to some point in the past that they don't know. They don't jump to obviously 1955. That's something even we didn't know. I mean, I know it when I'm watching it now. I don't think I knew it.
Right.
If I was watching this for the first time, I wouldn't know that, I suppose.
I mean, apparently in the original scripted version, in one of the first screenplays, they had, instead of 55, it being somewhere in like the mid-late 60s.
Oh, so it's a different time period? Okay.
Yeah. And they were going to basically have, during the hippie years of his parents being like protesters or whatever, and just kind of doing another thing of like, oh yeah, here's like my parents or whatever. But the weird part about it was going to be that he was theoretically going to upset the time stream again by getting in the way of his own conception. Which I'm kind of glad they didn't go down that path.
Yeah, well, I think that, and also they realized just the playful fun they could have with actually being in the same time period again and having them like be in the same scenes again, but sort of sneaking around those scenes, which is ultimately where we go. But so they're like, okay, so something's altered the timeline. It's went back to the past. It's old Biff. We found part of his cane, the bag from the shop that had the art, the book in it, whatever. It's like shit.
Marty's like, oh, this is my fault. I did this.
Yeah, and he's like, it's all in the past, and Marty's like, don't you mean the future? Whatever.
He is also, I noticed this at one point, when he holds up the newspaper saying George McFly was murdered on whatever date it was, there's, other news stories on the cover, and the one that I enjoyed the most was Richard Nixon elected to 5th term, and he promises the Vietnam War will end by 2015.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
I never noticed that. That's good. So it's like, okay, how do we find out when he got the book then? Like, what and Marty's like, I'll ask him. Like, I'll go up with it. And so we get this scene where this Biff is clearly not used to this Marty, like, having any sense of confidence or power in the conversation. So Marty comes in. Biff, despite being happily married to Lorraine, apparently, is with two ladies in a jacuzzi, and they're watching A Fistful of Dollars, and Marty just turns off the TV and says, party's over, we're going to talk about Gray's Sports Almanac, and like Biff's expression changes immediately. He's like, all right, you heard him, party's over, let's talk, kid.
I kind of love this next sequence because it's like Biff is almost treating him as like an equal here, where he's just like, all right, you know my secret, you're the only person on earth who does, so let's talk.
Yeah, I like this scene a lot too, but I will say this is one of the other little contrivances, is that, you know, because the scene ends with Biff saying, oh, you know, my older self, or, well, he doesn't even say it that way, because he doesn't really ever believe that it's, like, himself. He just thinks it's some old guy who says he's a relative. But he's like, oh, he said one day a kooky scientist or a teenager might come asking about the book, and, you know, if they ever do, to take care of them. And he pulls out a gun, so the scene ends with him chasing off Marty with a gun, and that leads to the next bit.
Yeah.
It is a little convenient for plot reasons that he is willing to just give all the information that Marty and Doc need before he decides to pull out the gun, because he could have just done that to start with.
I'm gonna go with Biff is not smart. We know that out and out. We know
that's fair.
Kind of stupid. But also, over the years, I'm sure he's gotten very egotistical. I'm sure he's gotten very much of like, I can't be stopped. I'm Biff Tannen, god damn it.
Yeah, it's not like this one doesn't bother me that much, because you can kind of explain it with him even just enjoying getting to talk about it for once, because he's never been able to talk to anyone about this. But, you know, I think there's an argument to say that he could have just started, like, the fact that he even gives them the date that they need so easily. Obviously, he doesn't know why they need it, but, you know, it's just a little contrivance, because, like, he could have just went straight to the, I'm going to kill you, right, without
that's fair.
Everything else, so.
I mean, it is also the thing where at no point does old Biff tell him time travel is possible, time machines are possible, don't give up this information.
He just says,
kill him. Like, I'm sure if he knew that a time machine was possible, he wouldn't have given up the information.
Yeah, because he knew that'd be a threat. Yeah. So obviously Marty reacts to the, October whatever, or November whatever.
12th, yeah.
12th, 1955. Because he's like, that's the day of that huge storm. I actually.
There was an earlier moment in the conversation where he's like, I remember the day the guy showed up because it's when I picked up my car after a drag race. And this guy was like, I thought you crashed into a manure truck. He's like, how in the hell could you know that?
Oh, my dad told me before he died. Actually, one of the things that comes up is that the movie treats it like a contrivance, but I don't actually think it is. When Marty and Doc are together again, right? And obviously, and I love the performance when he's like, you're never going to believe it. What?
Yeah.
November 12, 1955. He's like, I don't believe it, right?
Yeah.
Great reaction. But when they're actually on their way, and he's like theorizing, oh my god, the fact that Biff chose that day, like that could be of like, that day might be a significant point in the time nexus or something, or it could just be a completely unbelievable coincidence. And I feel like that was the writers trying to like just shoo away that, oh, this is a coincidence that he's picked that day, and we're just going to sort of like have a bit of fun with explaining it or having Doc theorize. But I actually think there's a non-contrived reason for this. I think the reason why Biff picked that day is because it's a no, even if he didn't remember, because old Biff, like, sort of, when he goes back and we see old Biff later on, he says something like, oh yeah, the manure, I remember that now. I think there's an argument that night where he got punched out by George McFly, it was the night of his senior prom, the night of that big storm. I think there's an argument that in some level this date just stuck out because it was an important night when he was that age.
It's literally the pivot point of his whole life.
Yeah, I think it makes complete sense that he might have picked that date.
Yeah, no, I would too. I think, they're not giving Biff enough credit here for remembering dates that like would have been of significance. Now, obviously, he could have picked any date. The fact that like Biff Tannen was unable to gamble prior to his 21st birthday, you kind of got to question, why did he go 3 years before that?
That's true. That's a good point.
So like, obviously there is some level of stuff, but like for him having to just pick a date of like, I'm going back and I want to change a certain point in my life, I think it makes sense that he would go back to the point where everything went wrong for him.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense to me. And if you want to explain if you need a reason why he went back before he could gamble, just like, oh, he had to be ready and convinced that it would work, so he had the years. Because that's the thing, when he hears the game in the radio, he doesn't quite believe it yet, but he hears the second game in the radio later on in the movie, and he's like, son of a bitch, these results are all right. Clearly, by the time he gets to 21, if anything, you could argue that he spends those 3 years working shitty jobs just so he has money to start with to bet, and then once he's bet it all, obviously, take him to the moon.
That doesn't matter. He has like 140 to 1 odds. I will say, this is one thing that doesn't get covered in the movie, and I don't think it needs to be. You can just assume that it's independent of each other, but clearly if the world went to shit as much as we see it did, that would change certain results of games. Like, there's no way that every single score still plays out exactly the same. Well,
no, I agree with that. I had that thought too, but I think the movie, like the implication I get from the movie is that he's not actually bet on any sports in years at this point. Because the little explanation in the museum thing at the bottom clearly said that with his earnings from that first couple of years where he was called the luckiest man on earth, he started Bifco, and I actually laughed out loud because one of the things they show that his company does is toxic waste disposal, and it's just barrels of toxic waste. I'm like, oh, he's such a villain. He's such a bad guy.
I mean, the other thing that got me obviously was the street when Marty first breaks into that house. One of the guys says like, oh, and you can tell your bosses we're not moving, like we won't be scared out of this area. And down the street, you can see that the entirety of all the houses are being put up for sale by Biff Realty Co. And it's like, oh, look, a real estate investor who's also a total dick.
That doesn't sound like real life.
Nah, couldn't possibly be.
So, no, I mean, I do think they kind of, maybe not explain it, but I do think they give you enough to sort of think, oh, well, he probably only did that for a few years and then with that fortune. Because, I mean, to be honest, with betting, I think at a certain point, people would refuse to take his bets. Like, if he keeps winning, I think the people, the bookies or whatever you want to call it, I think at a certain point, they would be like, you know what, no, you always win. We're not letting you bet here. Like, we're done.
That would make sense.
So, I think he gets a little fortune and then he turns it into a big fortune with lots of evil endeavors in the business world.
Yeah, he's just basically bullies and selfishes his way up the ladder until finally he reaches the top.
I think that's all it is. So, yeah, obviously you've got him running from Biff here with the gun and all that. One of my favorite little bits of this is when he gets into the stairwell and the three goons are chasing him, and Marty kind of like just climbs over to go to the stairs going the opposite direction, and then climbs back over. I just love the sort of playful use of the geography. Oh there.
Yeah, it's absolutely, like, it's not a callback to anything. It's not setting up anything. It's just taking advantage of a nice set.
Yeah. And of course the whole big thing where Biff admits that he killed his father. He's like, oh, 2 McFlies with the one gun when he gets him on the roof. And Marty jumps off. But of course the DeLorean was waiting for him. So it's a nice big kind of like hell yeah moment. Because
I like Biff's reaction where he's like, you can jump or I can shoot you. And Marty just jumps off and Biff's just like, Jesus, I didn't think he'd actually do it. Like, shooting is so much easier.
It's satisfying to see him get hit with a DeLorean, right, when Doc opens the door, because this is actually the last time we're going to see this Biff. So we're never going to see this Biff get any more comeuppance. So it's nice that it ends with him getting a little, a little knockdown.
Yeah. Like, sure, we're going to reset the whole timeline by the end of it, but it's nice that even in this timeline, we can still just make it so he's a loser.
Yes. It's just nice to see him lose. Yeah, that's a good way of putting that. So, Doc's like, okay, we're on our way to 1955, then it's time to go.
Yep. Yeah. But as they're flying, I think this is the first instance we get where there's something wrong with the time circuits, and like the destination date just keeps on flashing back to January 1st, 1885.
Yeah, a little setup for later. But yeah, so they get to 1955, and obviously Doc's very concerned. This is the scene where they're walking up and down the road that I mentioned, where he's like, "There's now 2 of me here and 2 of you here. We can't, run into ourselves. We have to be very careful of that." And Doc opens this briefcase that's got money for different time periods, and it's the 1939 money that he takes out for 1955. So it hadn't changed in that time, I guess.
I really like that, actually, from just a practical point of view. It would be kind of contrived or like even problematic if he pulled out money that was 1955 money. But the fact that he's like, no, this money is still in circulation, they'll gladly accept it. Like, there's no problem with that whatsoever. I like that it is like a decade plus earlier on that the money came from.
Yeah, although someone told me this, that apparently, like, legal tender, like, you can't, like, even though some money's not in circulation anymore, like, technically, if you walk in with a bill that's 100 years old, it technically still has to at least be accepted by the bank to, like, exchange it.
Yeah. But that's just it. It's the bank. Like, if I go to a vending machine with a gold certificate from 1880s, I don't think that it's going to give me a Pepsi.
That's fair. No, that's just interesting. I guess what I'm saying is, it'd be safer for him to travel if he didn't have the option of all the different money, to just have old money, because then he could just always start his trips by going to the bank and say, okay, here's my 1850 doubloons. Yeah. Please change these.
Worst case scenario, there's always going to be a pawn shop. Yeah. You just walk in there.
Give me some dollary dues, please. So I love the cut that happens here, because Marty is given some money, says, hey, go get some 1950s clothes, something inconspicuous. And then it cuts to Marty sliding into frame in a leather jacket and hat like he's a private investigator with the walkie-talkie. Oh my God, I love it so much.
Yeah, it is great. It's 100% played for humor moment, but it's such a good one.
No, it's good. It's that joke that this is what he thought was inconspicuous. And maybe to the 50s people it would be inconspicuous, but to, you know, anyone from his time period or whatever, and I mean, not so much.
Even when we get to the next movie, the idea of like what he wears before he goes to Old West times, he's like, are you sure this is what it was? And it's like, yeah, sure, no, totally.
Yeah. It's just fun. I also love that he doesn't actually replace any of these other clothes though. He's just wearing this jacket and hat like over what he was wearing anyway, so he's still wearing his you know, his Nike shoes and his like jeans and t-shirt from the 80s.
Yeah, that's later on. He's walking through the dance in this outfit, and all I could think is like, nobody's gonna comment the guy wearing denim. Like, nobody wears denim just casually out and about. Everyone's got their slacks or their khakis.
Yeah. But no, we get this fun stuff where he's like following Biff from his, like, Biff lives with his grandmother and he's following him around and he's going to pick up his car from getting fixed from the manure incident. And, you know, we get a lot of fun stuff here because it feels like coming back to like a nostalgia period, not because we have nostalgic for the 50s, but because we're nostalgic for the time we spent in the 50s and Back to the Future. So seeing young Biff be a dick to people, and then seeing young Lorraine again and Biff go over and like harass her, like, it's oddly comforting. Like, oh, we're back in like 1955.
Nothing comforts me more than seeing a young woman being harassed by a clearly over-the-top male.
I'm going to clip that and use that for blackmail purposes. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
But, you know, Marty's like hiding in the back of the car and all that. But this is also where old Biff makes his move and gets in the car. And they just set up here that Biff, like, other people can't really start his car. There's like a sort of knack to like turning the key or whatever. And he's like, oh, no one can start this car but me. But then old Biff does it and he's like, wait, how did you start the car? And like, Biff's too stupid to like put two and two together, but we, the audience, get it.
Yep. And he's just like, I think even at this earlier point, he's just like, look, I'll explain everything, just get in. And he drives him back to his garage, but like, there's that implication that he said, like, oh, don't worry about it. I'm your old family friend. I'm a distant relative. Don't worry about it.
Also, Lorraine was getting her dress for the dance, so you see the dress she's wearing in the first movie, like she's holding it. And when she runs away from Biff, she says, I wouldn't marry you if you had $1 million, which obviously ties into like Biff's motivations a little bit for everything.
He just had to make $1,001.
Yeah. Well, what I love about this is just like, $1 million. Like, don't get me wrong, $1 million would be a ton to me now, but it's not a lot of money in terms of like, if you were saying something like that to someone where you're like, oh, I wouldn't do something like that sounds more like, I don't know, 50 grand now.
Yeah. Here, hold on. So 1955, $1 is worth $11. So it'd be $11 million in today's money.
That's a lot better than $1 million.
Yep.
All right, flip that back the way though. $1 million today, backdate that to what $1 million today would be in, or you know what I mean, the other way around.
Yeah, $1 million divided by 1155. $86,000.
See, that doesn't sound as impressive. Like, imagine she said that to him. Oh, I wouldn't date you if you had $86,000.
That'd be a very specific line.
Very specific, yes.
But no, I actually think that it is a nice little character beat here that they specifically go out of their way in this movie to show Lorraine is like saying, no, I'm going to the dance with Calvin Klein. No, I've got all this stuff going on.
Oh, actually, even just her saying the name Calvin Klein just gave me a, like, yes, Calvin Klein.
Yeah. And then Biff, you know, we get to see his ego. We get to see him not being broken down yet by George. And he's like, no, whether you like it or not, you're gonna marry me.
Oh,
like,
yeah, he pulls her in. It's like, oh, you're my girl. You've just not realized it. Yeah, it's super. Like, he is a bastard. Like, he is a super abusive bastard.
I mean, even if he wasn't with her, yes, but even just the walk up to him getting his car, he like goes through multiple groups of children just playing games and just like ruins whatever they're doing.
Yes, he's a prick. So I love the shot. So like they drive back to like his grandmother's place and they're in the garage, and I love the shot of like Marty's head popping up behind old Biff at one point. Like just like the fact that he's there in the background the whole time, like paying attention to this as old Biff's giving the sales pitch, and young Biff's not really doing it, you know, listening and taking it seriously, but you know, he does his make like a tree and get out of here. He hits him. He's like, no, you sound like an idiot when you say it wrong.
God damn it. I as much as you love this shot of Marty popping in the background, this is the pinnacle of the VistaGlide technology for me, because you have these two characters played by the same actor. The camera keeps on moving in and out, switching between the shots without ever cutting. Obviously, there are a few cuts, but like it does these extended conversations between the two. And the most impressive part is when they pass the almanac between the characters, because even with the camera splicing technology, that shouldn't be possible, but they do it multiple times, and it's so well done.
Yeah. There's definitely some ways you can see how tricks happened. Like, for example, when he gets hit in the back of the head, when old Biff slaps him in the back of the head, it's a close shot on young Biff, so you just see the hand slap him, and then the camera goes over to old Biff. So you know that the hand that slapped him wasn't obviously Wilson's hand. That'd have been someone else.
Yeah, but it's all one take. When we do the zoom out from that, it's all one take still.
But it can't be his hand, so that's where the trickery's coming in, is that obviously they've got a body double or a hand double to slap the head, and then when the camera comes out, obviously, whoever that is disappeared behind the seat or something, wherever they are. So, yeah, that stuff's fun. Marty gets trapped in there because Biff locks up the garage and he's got nowhere to go. But you know, I love that at this point we've got a clear goal. We have to save the future. Biff's got this book. It's a simple MacGuffin that we can all understand. And it's like he's got it on his person, so Marty has to get to him. And at this point, Biff is going to go to that dance that's at the end of the first movie, so we're going to be in and around all of these events that were taking place. And we can almost use the first movie's events to like signpost things, and we know where we are and like things happening around us because we can use that as a framework. I love all that stuff. I will say though, there is definitely a lot of moments through all this Marty sneaking around stuff in the next like 20 minutes or so where, like, for example, when Biff comes back into the car and drives off, Marty starts talking to Doc in the walkie-talkie in the backseat of the car, and no, there's no way Biff would not hear that. You can't, like, it doesn't bother me. I love it because, you know, we're playing it for fun. We're doing, like, Back to the Future's kind of like a fun, pulpy kind of movie. You don't have to take it too seriously. But there's no way in hell he would not be hearing him in the backseat talking through the walkie-talkie.
I mean, he does look back every once in a while, but yeah, he probably should be able to pick up the full conversation regardless.
It's not the most egregious for me, though. The most egregious for me is later when Marty, like, Marty from the first movie comes through the door and it hits current Marty in the face, and young Marty just doesn't even notice that he's hit something or even notice that Biff's standing on the other side of the door. He just walks past both of them, and I'm like, How did you not even at least glance at them and be like, oh, that's weird?
He just nearly faded from existence. Yeah, cut him some slack. He's still recovering.
Yeah. These aren't big problems. They don't bother me. I'm just sort of saying that if you want to nitpick, if you want to point at things and go, hey, these things aren't quite as pitch perfect as everything in the first movie. These are the little things that are a little bit of a disconnect. And that's all it is. Because all of the actual sneaking around and all of the trouble that Marty's getting into and the confusion of, like, Biff's goons who are like basically switching between Marty's but not realizing, and like, wait, how the hell did he change his clothes so fast, and why is he up on stage now?
That was Billy Zane. Billy Zane's just like, how did he change his clothes so fast?
You know, like all that stuff is super entertaining. Obviously seeing Biff get chewed out by Strickland, and like
So just to give context, when he gets to the dance, they load up, they spike the punch, and then they have a nudie mag, ooh la la, that they're reading as well.
Which only remember, by the way, because when Marty thinks he's found the book and takes off the dust cover, which was disguising the porn magazine, he looks at it and goes, ooh la la. Like, I always remember that delivery. It's just one of those lines that stick in my head.
Because he's sure he's got it, but he's like, no, it's not here. But yeah, Strickland tracks down Biff at one point, takes the book, which obviously we believe is the Sports Almanac because it has the dust cover on it, bringing back that random ass mention of the dust cover.
They set
everything is set up all the time. But yeah, and then he ends up having to follow Strickland instead while Biff continues his adventures for the night.
Yeah. So, and Marty's freaking out. Doc's freaking out as well. Like, oh God, like, what are we going to do? And he's like, I don't know where he's going to be. But as he's saying that, in the window behind him, you can see it play out where George is about to punch him.
He opens up the door. Hey, you, get your damn hands off her.
You're very good at the George McFly impression. You know that?
Thank you. I try.
Yeah. So he hears, I think it's like Lorraine screaming a little bit, that finally has Marty kind of like, wait a minute, and turn around, and he's like, wait a minute, of course. He's like, it's all right, I'm going to go get it, Doc. I'm going to go get it. So he runs out, and this is where the guy thinks he's stolen his wallet. He also punches Biff again, which I think was just revenge. One for what future Biff in the alternate timeline had done to him, but also because just in general, the way he treats his mother. Like, there's just a lot of like pent up rage just coming out from Marty here.
Biff is 100% the type of person that every time you see him, it should end with a punch in the face, because he's always done something to deserve it in the meantime.
Absolutely. And all would be fine here. This would be completely fine, except for the fact that his three goons catch Marty running away here, and that ends up being, oh no, because they're looking for Marty and they find Back to the Future 1 Marty on stage playing Johnny B. Good. Because of that, they're going to wait off stage and jump him. But that means that'll affect the timeline of the first movie. So now present day Marty has to stop them from jumping previous Marty.
This is the point that I think they really should have leaned on with Doc's like freaking out. Because like, okay, he knows that if old Marty and new Marty meet, nothing will happen besides like potentially shock. But even then, I think Marty's used to it by now. Like, I don't think he's going to be freaked out that much about it.
Current Marty, I mean, I think Back to the Future 1 Marty might like faint, but like current Marty,
like, oh God, I'm still here, Jesus. But regardless, the fact that it would cause a like confusing time loop, it would cause a thing that theoretically should not be possible to happen, because if old Marty doesn't make it back, new Marty can't be here either, and it would just be like an instant fade thing. Like, it wouldn't be a thing of, oh, maybe we could correct it later on down the road. No, you missed your chance. You're not going back to the future
arguably again. No, actually, maybe not, because Biff already has the book. But I was going to say, arguably, technically, that would cancel everything that's happened out for both movies and just go back to the original version of the timeline.
Yeah, potentially. Except if the parents still continue their life together, old Marty would still be able to live, but he would just be in that timeline now.
Yes. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, we get the whole section where Marty's like climbing over the rafters of the concert as he's trying to like drop the sandbags on the bad guys, and that's ultimately what he does. I do actually love when he first comes out of the dance though, and he sees himself playing Johnny Be Good. There's just this little moment where he kind of like not like he sort of goes like he's like approving of his own playing. That's
it's
nice
pretty all right. This is, hopefully I don't go too hard at the end. Oops. That's the other thing that this movie when they get back to the 50s, Marty remarks, Doc, it feels like I was just here yesterday. And Doc tells him, like, you were here, like, literally yesterday. And it really goes to show you, the first movie took place over the course of a week, but, like, this movie is, like, 12 hours of Marty's life after that last movie ended. It is just so condensed of, like, how much he had to go through immediately following that.
Yeah. I'm going to disagree with Doc a little bit, because I think between him getting knocked out and waking up in the tower, I feel like it's probably been a bit more than that. But I mean, it's up for debate.
Lorraine said you've been asleep for 2 hours.
Okay.
So he was only knocked out for 2 hours. That being said, getting from wherever they were at via the Skyway to the point where it got dark at night, that did imply that it was going to take several hours there. So
yes,
there was at least, I mean, I would still say it's under 24 hours. I think that him saying you were here yesterday is still an accurate point to make.
Because I feel like, when he got back, he went to sleep, and, the first movie ended with him waking up the next morning. And then I feel like the events that have taken place this time so far have at least been a day. So I would feel like it's more like 2 days, but I'm splitting hairs with that. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it's all been very, very close together.
Yeah. Like, basically, all is fine. He's got the book. He's saved his younger self. Everything's fine. He's going to meet Doc on the roof. But he can't help but watch himself talk to Lorraine after the concert and sort of like admire that he pulled that off. And it's not in like a ego way. It's more just like, oh, he's actually taking a moment to appreciate that he did that and it worked, and it's kind of nice.
But he was kind of tense in the moment, what with the whole having to get there and Back to the Future thing.
But then, of course, Biff catches him here and confronts him. And this is where young Marty like slams his door in Marty's face. And this is what lets Biff see that he's got the magazine or the book in his jacket. So he grabs that and kicks him.
Yeah, we also get another chicken moment. We
That's
get another
right,
one of those, like, come on, you and me, let's have it out now. And Marty's like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah, Marty's going to walk away, and he calls him chicken. But it's also quite rough the way Biff kicks him in the stomach a couple of times when he's down. One for his car, of course, because he really cares about the car.
Absolutely. Yep. One scene we kind of skipped over. It's not important to the plot, but it is the Doc meeting Doc moment.
Oh yeah, this is like a little. Again, this is like how oblivious is young Doc that he never noticed that he was talking to himself.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, from his perspective, from young, I say young, you know what I mean. The other Doc's perspective, he never, ever in a million years would have expected to be able to be talking to himself at that moment right then. With all of the crap he gave Marty of saying, like, don't know too much about your future, don't come back, like, it's all too dangerous. The fact that he would have another version of himself right there would absolutely be the last thing on his mind.
I do think if it has a purpose, and I think I would debate that it does, I think that scene's main purpose, other than just having a little Doc on Doc, because that's kind of what the fun they had with the scene.
The sexiest idea of all time.
I think it's here just to remind you of what the other events of the first movie is that we're doing all that stuff at the clock tower, because obviously later on, when we cut to it, like, yeah, sure, you can assume people have seen the first movie, but it makes you, it reminds the audience, hey, remember that younger Marty's going to go do all this after he leaves the dance. That's what's going to be happening. So it kind of brings that back to the front of your mind a little bit. I think that's the purpose of it more than anything. But
I'd say so. They do a nice little pan out moment to show the whole setup of everything.
Yeah,
it does a good job of reminding you.
So Biff's got the book back. He drives off with it, and Doc comes and gets Marty, and it's like, shit, we still have to get that book back. It's like, oh, he went east or whatever. So that's so we get this great sequence. I love this because we never even mentioned this earlier, but when Marty was done with the hoverboard sequence, he kept it, right? The girl didn't want it back because she got the rocket one, so he just keeps it. And I love that it gets used practically here in like the 1950s, because it's like, oh, we're using something that he collected from the future to help in the past. And also, without ever reminding us of this actually ties back into something from the start of the first movie, is him sketching. This is something he did. Yeah. He sketched at the back of cars. So I love that all of this comes together in this, okay, this is what we're going to do. You're going to drop me off quietly behind his car. I'm going to hoverboard over and try and get around. And even just the moment where Biff looks over and sees him, and like, he's just angry enough that he doesn't even think about how he's there. He's just like, no, I'm just going to punch you and hit
you. I mean, he could easily just assume it's a normal ass skateboard or whatever. Like, there's nothing to say it wouldn't be.
True. So yeah, and we get a whole thing here because, like, again, one of my slight critiques would be that Biff is, and to an extent, some of the other characters like young Marty and young Doc, but Biff is so oblivious to what's going on around him that it actually feels like a big deal that once he's actually like gotten rid of Marty briefly, he's not dumb enough to assume that he's just gone for good. He actually starts paying attention to his mirror, right? Because that's the thing about a car, that there's a lot of mirrors at the front for the driver to see behind him. So he starts looking at his rear view mirror, and he actually does see Marty, moving around the back of the car. And I'm like, okay, this is just the right amount at the right time to make him feel more threatening. He's learned. This is the part in the movie where you're like, oh no, the Velociraptor just got a bit smarter.
I was about to say the doorknob, the Velociraptor
that's
on the
exactly
doorknob.
What it is. It's the raptor escalating in his intelligence just a little bit to make him more dangerous, so that Marty's in more jeopardy, and we get the whole putting the hoverboard up against the wall of the tunnel and all that. And he gets the book, but then Biff does a U-turn and starts chasing Marty. So we get this standoff moment where Marty's on the hoverboard and he's trying to kick his way down the tunnel, and there was even a setup earlier on where Doc was like flying off in the DeLorean and he got caught in the bunting next to the billboard. Did you call it bunting in the US? That's the UK
I don't
word
think I have a word for it. I'm sure someone calls it something, but I don't call it anything.
For people who don't know what I mean by bunting, we're talking about like if you're at like a used car place and there'll be like the triangles on the string for decoration. That's what bunting is.
I'm trying to Google it. It ain't coming up.
Yeah, I don't know what else to call it.
I have a bird called a bunting.
Bunting decoration. I'm going to type that. The images have come up. Bunting decor.
Okay, I got it.
Yes.
I don't know if there's another word for it in America.
But here's the thing though. This is such a common thing you see. You know what this is when you see see an image of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm pretty sure we just collectively call all that stuff streamers. Like, I don't think we have a differentiation for specifically flags and stuff.
Yeah, so it's just all the little triangles on the string that you find at these types of places. Anyway, they actually used that here. Doc still had it in the car. He like dangles it down like a rope for Marty to grab and lifts him up. And amazingly, Biff realizes he's driving full speed right into a manure truck again. And I cannot tell you how much I love him spitting out some manure and saying, I hate manure.
I thought that was one of the lines I thought for sure was in the first movie, but then
no,
it was one of those things that only came back in the sequel. But to
be fair though, it is funnier after it's happened a second time for him to say I hate manure, because now it's a running thing.
Absolutely, and it's going to take another $300 to clean out his car.
Yeah.
The other thing that I love that I didn't notice the first time is that as they're going down this tunnel, like as they're fighting to get control of the book, one of the things that Biff almost does is move close enough over into the other lane to have him get hit by this oncoming truck.
Yeah.
And you see the truck, you don't think anything of it. It's just a truck. But then you realize after the fact, that's the manure truck.
Yeah.
And it's just again, these perfect little synchronicities of how they take all these things, and even if it's paid off a second later, they still take this time to set it up so that it's there for the next part.
Yeah. And then Marty ultimately gets the book by kind of hoverboarding up the wall and kind of doing like a flip over the car as he grabs it. It's a fun little move, actually, to be honest.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's a super fun sequence, and it's kind of in many ways, it's the end of the movie in terms of the movie's main plot, because obviously everything that happens next is mostly, the sort of the shock and like the setup for the next one. This is kind of like the goal's been achieved. We've got the book. All that's left is to burn it, destroy it. Hey, the matchbook and the newspaper changes. We've succeeded. We've saved the future. But what's so beautiful about this though is that there's a lightning storm going on tonight. Remember, because that's the whole point of tonight, is that there's a thunderstorm. And Doc's like in the DeLorean floating up in the air, and literally, as Marty says, be careful, you don't want to get struck by lightning. He literally gets struck by lightning at that exact second.
Raccoon gone.
And again,
it's such good script writing. It is so clever the way they're like, we want to set something up for the third movie. We've already established that lightning is enough to get the DeLorean to travel through time once it is
that's
hit.
Great. Yep.
It's just immediately like, there you go. That's all you need to do.
I think what I like about it especially is that lightning is typically a very unpredictable thing. And the entire premise of the first movie is that for the first time in human history, we know exactly the time and place that lightning is going to strike, and the whole plot revolves around it. In this movie, you almost forget, because that's what the entire first movie is that we're so sure when and where it's going to happen, how unpredictable it is in the context of where the storm is right now. Because obviously the lightning in the first movie has not happened yet. This is like half an hour before, maybe however long it takes Marty to run to the town square from here. That's how long it is. But so this happens, and it's a really like nice surprise, and in the sense of like it being unexpected, and It feels kind of dark and like, oh no, what happened to Doc? Now, obviously, I think anyone would quickly assume, okay, there's a third movie, he's traveled in time, whatever, right?
Yes and no, because I did see a lot of reports that this movie was not marketed with the idea that the third movie was like announced at all. So people went into this expecting a conclusion.
Yeah, but they found out pretty quickly because there's a trailer for the third movie before the credits.
Right. But I'm just saying, there's Doc is gone. He's disappeared. Rain starts coming down. Marty's freaking out. And then a car starts driving up the road. I don't think it would be within audiences' expectations to say Doc figured out a way to make it work, and that's him coming back up again.
Joe, what I liked about this whole thing with like the guy coming from Western Union to deliver this letter is that it might be my favorite, or one of my favorite, like because it's not a new cue, right? This movie and the first movie had the the chimes or whatever you want to call them, right? That little riff that it does. The movie started with that at the start, and this one especially. But is that the moment those hit, as this guy's coming out of the car, it might be my favorite one of my favorite moments of like a cue coming back and being used to build intrigue, because you're like, wait, who is this guy? What is this? What's going on? And like that little like, because I think what I like about those chimes is that cue is that there's a little playfulness to it that kind of suggests like there's something good about it, right? It's mysterious, but it's not like menacing mysterious. It's mysterious and like, something good's about to happen, kind of, or maybe not good. That's maybe not the way to phrase it, but it doesn't feel menacing at the very least. Yeah. So, like, this guy's coming over, and they even play like it's menacing because he's like, "I've got something for you." He says it like a gangster, and then he whips out a letter and goes, "A letter? I need you to sign for this, please."
He's just immediately the cheeriest guy.
Yeah, but I actually loved like the little bit of the writing here where he's like, "Hey, we've had this letter for like 70 years, and we even had a bit of a bet going, as if because we were told someone answering to Marty would be here at this time and place on this date." And we had a bet going as to whether or not you'd actually be here. Guess I lost. Like, I kind of like that it became this like mythical thing in the office of like, hey, we're getting close to 1955. That letter's better get delivered soon. Like, this is kind of wild. So I like all that.
Love it. I love it from the perspective of Marty as well. The moment he hears, like, we've had that for 70 years, you can see the gears turning in his head.
Yeah, his eyes just kind of look like, oh.
There's only one person who knows I'm here, and the moment you say anything about a bunch of years passing, I know what's up.
Yeah, and he opens the letter, and he reads a little bit of it, and he's like, it's from the dock, and he goes to stand over by the light. And he doesn't even finish the letter here, right? Obviously, there's more of the letter that we hear of in the next movie. But he just gets to the part of like, I've been living for 6 months in 1885 or whatever it is, and he's like, 1885. I can like, honestly, one of my favorite lines of dialogue in all of movies might be the next thing that Marty says when this guy says to him, "Hey kid, are you okay? Do you need any help?" Marty turning to him in the pouring rain and saying, "There's only one man who can help me now." Smash cut to Doc in the clock tower, reconnected.
Cue the climactic music.
Yeah. I love that line. It's just that it's just like a crowd cheering moment of like, okay, you realize what he's about to do, but also just this idea of like, no, this is all about Marty and Doc. It's their relationship. Like I almost get teary-eyed watching it because I've been watching this movie my whole goddamn life. When he says that line, there's only one man who can help me. So yeah, we see the ending of the first movie play out. Doc sliding down the beam or the cable, and the DeLorean going through, the lightning striking, all of that. And I kind of said this in the first review as well, but I love that they redid the shot of Doc, dancing down the street and running, only for it to get to that music cue where it originally cut away, but instead of cutting away, Marty just slides into the background in his leather jacket and runs down towards him, and the music gets all bumpy again, like dun 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 dun. He's like, "Doc, it's me." He's like, "What?" Doc's, Christopher Lloyd's doing the over-the-top acting where he's like, Marty, it can't be you. I just sent you to the future. It is me, Doc. I'm back from the future. Great Scott. The over-the-top fainting where he sort of falls, like he sort of spins and falls. Yeah. Beautiful. Music plays, to be concluded. As far as like cliffhangers go in a movie to set up the next one, chef's kiss. And maybe it's just because this is the example. This is the first movie I can ever think of in my youth that had an ending like this with a to be continued. It's just, it's a form of experience this that I just, that I can't not love in every way.
I mean, even with like, obviously the first Back to the Future, I don't know if it was a thing in theaters where it said to be continued. I think it was.
The first one? No, it never did.
It didn't?
In theaters, it did not. That was added for the VHS once they knew they were doing a sequel.
Okay, fair enough. But it still at least had a little bit of like a sequel bit. It still had a thing of like, okay, they're going to be in the future, despite the fact they never had plans of doing anything with
it. Because that thing, because when they put out the DVDs in 2003, the to be continued was missing, and people said, why is that not there? What's wrong? And they said, no, the reason why it's not there is because this is based on the original theatrical version.
Okay.
So this is the correct version of the first movie does not have it. That was an additional thing later.
Right. But with the first movie, obviously it is a completed story. Yes, you have that tiny little dangling bait of like, oh, okay, we could continue the adventures if we want to, but that's not necessary. This is the big one where it's like, no, not only are we going to continue it, we have already set up everything we want to do. We've given you all of these hints throughout of the Old West and all that stuff throughout this entire movie. We know the plan, we know what we're doing, and we're going to give you that product. And it's not a maybe someday in the future. It's 2 years later.
No, 1 year later.
Is it? I thought it was 91.
No, 1990.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, it's the very next year because they shot them back to back so they could release them 1 year apart. So it was like summer 89, then summer 90. Okay. So yeah, and they show a trailer for the third one. And what's so funny about this trailer, the play, is that I remember when Back to the Future 2 was first on TV in the UK, right? Regular TV, that is, on the BBC. I remember that trailer was still there. But at the end of the trailer, because this is the one I had recorded off TV, which is why I saw it a bunch of times. Okay. At the end of the trailer, at the end of the movie for 3, instead of saying coming summer 1990 like the movie does, and it does here still if you watch it now, it actually said coming to the BBC, whatever year it was coming to the BBC. They actually changed the text to fit the channel in when it was coming. I just thought that's a weird little memory from my childhood from the one I had taped off TV.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I don't know.
If we're counting the end trailer as part of the movie, which I wouldn't, but
nah, I mean, we're going to talk about the third movie when we get to it. There's no point.
Yeah, the only thing I would critique is that there is a singular shot of
the ending.
Marty and Jennifer.
Yeah, I noticed
together.
That too.
Shouldn't have been in the movie trailer. You shouldn't have put that there.
Like, obviously, we expect they're going to win by the end, but it feels weird showing part of that. In the trailer.
Like, maybe theoretically you could have convinced audiences back then of like, no, he's going to go to the past or back to his normal timeline, then back to the past again, and like Jennifer will be with him or something. But knowing what we know now, that's like way too deep in the movie. You shouldn't have had that there. Yeah. It's
the sort of thing where watching it, having seen the third one already, you're a lot more critical of what they've chosen to put in than you would be if you hadn't seen it. But No, super excited to get it. And I think what's so interesting about the third movie is that the third movie is very much a bookend, and that the third movie operates a lot more like the first one. Obviously, it's a very different setting, it's a very different time period, but it's very similar in that, oh no, we're stuck in the past, and it's all about just trying to get one successful trip back to the future. It's just that the obstacle is completely different. Instead of it being the plutonium, because we got Mr. Fusion, it's actually just the regular fuel for the car that's the problem. And I love that switcheroo, but that's something we can talk about properly when we get to Back to the Future 3. So yeah, obviously, like I mean, despite some nitpicks that I've put out, and I've watched that enough to notice things that aren't completely perfect. I love this movie. It is playful. It plays with the mechanics. It plays with the characters and their reactions. The relationship of Doc and Marty still as endearing as ever, and their performances and the way they like. I think when I was a kid, I think I saw this one first, and I can't remember what I thought of like following it at the time. But I bet that it still worked for me. And I would never recommend watching them in order, obviously. But I think it worked for me at the time because fundamentally, just Marty and Doc going on their adventure together and fixing these problems as they arise is so entertaining that it works even on that base level. And then you add in all the great ways that it kind of plays on the motifs from the first movie, and the villain of Biff, which arguably he's more of a villain in this one than he even was in the first one, and that's fun. Like you've elevated a character by doing that, and it makes up for losing someone else. Which, who knows what would have done with George? Like I said earlier, he would have probably not been dead in the alternate timeline. He probably would have been around in some way if he was back. Is my guess.
If I had to guess, I would probably say that Biff would want to put him into the same sort of position that Biff had him, of just like back in that underling, but like even worse.
Yeah, I suspect that's probably what he would have been, and maybe they'd have done a few more. Because I did notice that a little bit when they were doing the 50s stuff again, where like it was very carefully chosen in the shots in terms of, okay, it's either footage that's just straight from the first movie, or if it's a new angle, we can never see like Crispin Glover from the front.
Right,
you sort of notice them cutting around that a little bit, which is fine because we're just reusing scenes from the first movie anyway. But I suspect that if they had them, they would have just shot new angles if it was there.
Absolutely. So. And then obviously, I brought this up slightly in the first movie, but Crispin Glover sued over that, and they ended up settling out of court, and the SAG basically made new rules to say, okay, don't do that. Like, that's not, you can't just use their face without their permission, even if you do own the footage. Like, you gotta at least talk to them and pay them and whatnot. So
yeah, that's interesting. I think there's still a little bit of context there though, because I think if they do, like, let's say there was a previously on in the movie, right, like a TV show, I think technically that would be okay, because it is literally just here's a sizzle reel of the movie we already released. Right. I think the issue is that they're sort of placing it into new scenes and sort of like acting as if it's like
they're implying that Crispin Glover is still in the movie.
Yes. Interesting. That said, though, I'm kind of on the side of Back to the Future than I am Crispin Glover. So,
well, I'm on the side of people getting paid for their work.
Sure,
but obviously he was already paid for this work, so it is this weird little middle ground area.
Yeah, it's a bit weird. Yeah, but here's the thing, though. The footage where you see him from the front and it's just footage from the first movie, I assume that's okay, because it's still literally just the footage from the first movie.
Well, no, because that's what he sued over. He sued over the idea that, like, you know, you are using my likeness in this. It's basically the same conversation we're having nowadays with AI actors and stuff like that. I don't think it is, though, because if the likeness is there, then is that something that they are owed royalties on?
This is a bit more of a nuanced topic, because I think it's the same thing. I think if you're literally just showing the footage that you already finished from the first movie, I mean, maybe you could argue there should be some kind of royalty fee just for reusing it in a new production. Fair enough, I guess. But like in the same way that, like, for example, in this movie, there's a scene of them watching A Fistful of Dollars, right? I don't think Clint Eastwood should be expecting a payday because they licensed a clip from the movie, because it's a clip from the movie.
But what you just said, they licensed a clip from the movie, and then whatever the deal is that they had with licensing with Clint Eastwood, he would get residuals off of that as well, if he was included in that sort of thing.
Oh, if he is, but like...
Yeah, but that's what the problem is.
But regardless if he is or he isn't, though, I don't think, like, whatever contracts they've made for residuals based on licensing, whatever be damned, I don't care. I'm saying, though, that it's still just a clip from that movie, so whoever has the rights to license out clips from the movie is the only one that needs to get paid for it. So, in the case of a movie where you own the movie, you own the clips, you should be able to put those clips in your new movie regardless.
And I get what you're saying. I understand that viewpoint from it. But the issue here is that because it was just Back to the Future 1 to Back to the Future 2, and it was owned by the same studio or whatever, there wasn't this residuals thing set up. It was like, no, this isn't Back to the Future 1 anymore. We're not licensing Back to the Future 1. We're just using the footage again. So it kind of dodged around the system as a whole.
It sounds like a lot of complicated, tangled lawyer nonsense,
and
to be honest.
That's why it's settled out of court. We still don't have laws on it. They just said, okay, it's not worth putting the money in to fight this. Here's $300,000. Please go away.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. What if they put a disclaimer at the start saying all footage of Crispin Glover is from the first movie, and any shots from behind of his head is a body double? There you go. Disclaimer mid.
I'm curious. I didn't actually pay attention during the opening credits scroll. Did Crispin Glover's name pop up?
I don't think so, no. I don't think he would have got credit.
Fair enough.
Maybe like an archive footage credit, I suppose, if you really want to give him one, but I wouldn't have thought so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway. I suppose that leads us to our wrapping up segments here.
Yes.
What is your scene of the movie?
Oh, God. It's so hard. And like, I jokingly say that for a lot of movies, but this one, it is genuinely a difficult question to ask of like, how do I take everything in this movie and just boil it down to, and this was my favorite part.
I don't know, but I don't care. Do it.
Yeah, that's fair. I will. If I had to, I feel like it's got to be something either relating to the explanation of the alternate or somewhere in the future scene. I'm gonna go with the hoverboard sequence of in the future of 2015. I think that sequence has become just so iconic in its own right. People 30 years down the road were like, yes, give us the hoverboard. And it's so well done. It's crafted perfectly. It calls back to the original in almost identical ways, but it doesn't feel like tacky. It doesn't feel like, oh, you're just doing the sequence over again. It feels unique and it feels like its own thing at the same time. So yeah, I'm going to give it to the 2015 hoverboard sequence. But honestly, any sequence in this movie could have just as easily gotten up there.
Yeah, I mean, I am kind of tempted to go with the hoverboard sequence from later in the movie, because I love it being taken out of its original context and just being used as a tool that he has. Same reason why I love it when it gets used in the third movie. But I mean, I said that, you know, only one man can help me now is one of my favorite lines in cinema. So I think I have to go with that scene of the car coming up in the rain after the lightning strike, and like sort of, and I'm kind of including the cut to what it cuts to next as well. But just that, you know, that segment is what I'm picking. So there you go. All right, MVP of the movie.
Whew. I mean, it's such a good cast all around.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's three main choices, because I think there's an argument for Marty, there's an argument for Doc, and I think there's an argument for Biff, and I'd include Griff in that because it's the same actor.
Tom Wilson. I mean, I gotta at least mention the Vista Glide. If we're able to talk about like all of these other
That's
things,
not a person, but I mean,
the engineers behind the Vista Glide, because it's what makes so much of this movie work. The future segments, anytime anyone's interacting with themselves, but even like Marty's family around the kitchen table, all of these very small little moments that would otherwise go unnoticed, they use this technology expertly to just sell you it. And you don't question it for a moment. You just say, yeah, there's Griff and Biff. What's the problem with that? Like, you don't even think about it. So honestly, I'm considering that just from the viewpoint of it makes the movie tick. But as long as I give it the honorable mention, I think I'm probably still going to come down on the side of, I'm gonna say Biff.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna say Tom Wilson. I think Tom Wilson, like you said it earlier on, this is Biff's movie. As much as like Marty and all them really sold the original, and they're still fantastic here, having Doc around more, love it. I'm not going to turn that down at all. But I think that having the three different, technically four versions of Biff throughout this movie and seeing all the ways that he's able to play the character, Tom Wilson just does a fantastic job with it. And Griff is always entertaining. Donald Trump version of Biff is literally the stuff of my nightmares nowadays. So yeah, I love it.
We have to get David a t-shirt that says "Make Hill Valley Great Again."
I would wear it unironically.
Yeah, this is tough. I think there's a genuine argument for Biff, so I get that choice. But if I'm picking between the main two, and I'm still kind of tempted to, like, they both have so many moments where their performance adds so much to the movie, where whether it's just like an overreaction from Doc, or like Marty like sticking his head out, you know, when he's hiding or sneaking about, or just these little reactions they have that are just so animated and just give the movie so much character. It's really something. I don't remember what I picked in the first movie. I don't even remember if we were doing this when we did the first movie. We might not have been.
I don't think we were.
Yeah. Which is annoying because if I'd picked Marty in the first movie, I'd feel quite good about picking Doc in this one. But
I will plainly say that because Back to the Future 3 exists and I know it influenced a little bit of who I'm picking.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going Doc. My heart says Doc.
Okay.
But it's a tight one. It's very close, and you know, but I'm going Doc. I'm going Doc.
All right. Totally fair.
All right, there you go. David, what are you rating Back to the Future Part 2?
10.
Not
even a question. I gave the first one a 10, and I believe this one somehow manages to meet and surpass it. So 10.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can respect how bold you feel about it. That said, though, I'm going with a extremely high but more sensible 9 out of 10 for me.
Fair enough.
It's an excellent movie. It's fantastic. It's one of the best sequels of all time. But I'm not saying it's like there's only one pair of movies in a franchise that got 10s back to back for me, and that is Alien and Aliens. Back to the Future did not quite achieve it, but
I guess that just shows where our differences lie in what we enjoy. That's I mean, to be fair, I did give those both 10s as well, so
yeah. Also, I just gave this a 9 and sung its praises for the majority of this runtime. So
look, I will 100% go the way that the internet treats video game scores when it comes to Back to the Future. What do you mean you didn't give it a perfect 10? You must hate it.
I use the whole goddamn scale. Sometimes a 7's a great score, okay?
If I ever see a 7 on a Back to the Future movie, I will riot. And to be fair, IMDb does only give this like a 7.6, and I don't get that at all.
Well, I mean, 7.6 is actually quite high for IMDb.
It is, but like, more.
There's not that many movies over an 8, David, on IMDb.
No, that's true. I know.
Yeah. I mean, the first one's probably only like an 8.5 or something like that.
Let me check. I'm already on the page. It is a 8.5, yep.
Oh, I nailed it. All right.
Spot on.
I'll take it. Yeah, so there you go. In context of where the first one is, that sounds about fine.
So, fair enough.
All right, everyone. That's been Back to the Future Part 2. We're already over 2 hours. David still get his homework movie.
Yes.
So just quickly, next week we will be doing a movie called It's What's Inside, which is a recent Netflix release. We're sort of fast tracking that in, which is something we should be doing more often, to be honest, when sci-fi movies crop up. I need to start leaving more like little gaps in the schedule for anything that appears. But that's what we're going to be doing next week. And of course, like I alluded to earlier, you can support the show and all the movie podcasts at MailFuzz Movies by going over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and supporting us over there for various amounts per month, whatever you feel comfortable with. But you get access to different bonus content at different tiers. At the $3 and $5 tiers, respectively, you get access to 2 monthly shows from me and David about more movies. The Criterion Cut is a monthly show where we do movies from the Criterion Collection, so that's all sort of artsy-fartsy. We get to talk about themes and motifs and all that sort of stuff. And then at the $5 tier up, you get Extra Reels, which is where we review some of the worst things ever made. And oh boy, there's all sorts of fun shenanigans on there. We've recently done things like Jim Cata, Madam Web, Leonard Part 6, we've done Neil Breen movies. There's all sorts of things to enjoy in the torture realm over there. Even a couple of
hope that we never hit Back to the Future 3, because at that point I have nothing to stick around for anymore. I could leave.
We also have a couple of sci-fi movies on that show as well. Sometimes if the sci-fi movie's bad enough, it'll be on Extra Reels instead of this show.
Yes.
So there you go. All right, every episode of the Ace, David goes back and watches a movie that was on the show before his time, so that he's catching up and everything and is well informed. David, what was this week's homework movie?
This week's homework movie, I decided to stick with, hey, time mechanics. How can we explore those? And the answer is Tenet.
Very good.
I will be honest, this is like the 4th time I've watched this movie. And the first 3 times I watched it, I got it, but only on like, I understood what they were kind of talking about. I didn't really understand the plot of the movie or like what the goals of the characters were, because I was so wrapped up in the mechanics of like, how does things move forward, but also backward. This is the first time where I started paying attention to the plot, and it's all right. It's not a complicated plot. It's a very straightforward, like, there's a MacGuffin, we got to get the MacGuffin, and we're just taking a very strange path around it. So, I don't know. I've always loved Inception, and you guys have done that on the show, right?
Of course, yeah.
I'll get to Inception eventually, obviously, but I think Tenet was one that, even after watching it the first time, it was the feeling of Nolan got a bit too big for his britches here. He got just a little bit of like, I'm going to tell the most complicated story. And it's like, I'm not even going to name the main character. I'm just going to call him the protagonist. And I'm going to be all up in this, like, how complicated can we get? And it just, I like the concept of it. If you wrote it down on paper and said, you know, primer, but Christopher Nolan does it, I'm down. But I think that the way that this ultimately played out, it was just a little bit too much with not enough actual substance underneath the mechanics that Nolan was working with. So all in all, for me. I think now that I finally have watched it for this show and I understood the plot that we were going for, I don't really have an interest in coming back to this movie again for quite some time. Mm-hmm. So I think overall, I'd say it's like an 8. It's still a very well done movie, but like it's definitely multiple ticks down from what I would even say like Inception, and especially movies like Back to the Future are.
Well, just, you know, on their scale, 8 is great. So you want to stick with that? You still feel it's a great movie?
No, I'd still say great. Yeah. I'd say great. I think it's a masterpiece in the way that it was created. I think that there's a lot of great technical effects to it in the way that it explores like its mechanics, and that's obviously something I have a great interest in. But it just doesn't have that underlying passion to it of why should I care about the characters? And that's what's really docking it from like what could have been a 9 if it had that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's on the weaker end of Nolan's scale, just purely because it is a bit messier, or at least it is harder to completely get into and understand everything in the way that you can in these other movies. But I still liked what it was doing and what it was going for. I haven't went back to it though since it came out, so be curious to see how I feel about it on a viewing next time. But
yeah, I watched it 2 times when it came out, and then once more like 6 months later, and then this is my first time since then. So it's been a while. All
right, okay, there you go. That will bring an end to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. It has been a beefy episode, so thank you for sticking with us. Obviously, we will get to Back to the Future Part 3 down the line. We do actually have it tentatively scheduled in for a date. I'll just say it's in the new year. It's not going to be this year. Yep. But not too long after that, all things considered. So look forward to that. Look forward to a bunch of more recent stuff that we're doing just now on the show. We've been doing a lot of 2020s sci-fi movies. We recently did The Beast, Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes, coming up soon. Obviously, we've got the very new film, It's What's Inside, but we've got like a whole host of other movies from the last like 4 or 5 years. So look forward to that over the next couple of months. We'll see you for that. Keep watching Science Fiction and Computer at Salsa.